There's no time.
Lost. Tides. Darkness. Tears.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? Nothing much, obviously. What is this thing that's like in the corner of the... Oh, it's that. Okay.
Oh, is it getting in the way?
Yeah, it's just... I don't know, it's just bothering me. But I can't move it, though. It's being a butthole. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that fixed it. Okay. It's just like a little piece of the wire.
I'm gonna run ball today. I'm not even gonna bring my hat.
Ooh, hardcore. You're not even gonna do... You could do like a wig.
I got a beard now, so I don't need the hat.
You could do the Mozart wig, like, to kind of go... I know it's a little old for, like, the Victorian era,
No,
but...
no, if I go get a wig, I'm gonna get Conan.
He's gonna go get the Conan wig.
Yeah, Danzig, yeah. Yeah.
Well, then it would match my hair, because this is the black one. Yeah, that's what Danny Rolling said. White wig. That's what I thought, too. Because that's kind of like the only historical one that you have.
I ain't fucking with that.
Don't you have one? Don't you have one that's a mullet?
Yeah, I got all that shit.
I thought you.
I got all that. I just have.
I thought you had a K-pop wig too.
I got
Although I don't think you hardly ever wear them.
Wigs over there.
World of wigs.
I can manifest as any character I want. I need a fucking L. Ron Hubbard wig. That'd be awesome. I can go fucking break off into L. Ron Hubbard. Because Zach said I need L. Ron needs to be in every show. But I don't know if I can manage that.
I mean, you probably could if you could just do it briefly. We could have, like, L. Ron's... Well, it's just kind of like on the old shows where we used to ask BTK's opinion about various serial killers. We could ask L. Ron Hubbard his opinions about whatever topic it is that we're talking about.
David's in. What's up,
What's
Mark?
up, Dave? Hello, you two out of work, and you're my drive home.
Okay, good.
Is that Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fucking...
Oh, yeah.
This shit I'm on's fucking with me.
Yeah.
I got bad trend cough, and
yeah, he's just hacking and hacking all the time. He's gonna hack up a lung.
Yeah, this shit that I'm on is known for that. And I'm also starting to get weird side effects that's known for, like thinking that your girlfriend's cheating on you and getting paranoid.
Yeah, he was telling me about that earlier. I'm like, is that why you've been acting so weird and like crabby like the last few days?
That people are talking about you, you know what I mean, and fucking that, you know what I mean, that they don't like you, you know. It's just you start getting fucking hyper masculine behavior and shit. You're like, oh, she's gonna dump me. I'm gonna have to get me another girlfriend and dump her before she dumps me, and then that way I can save face, and because we can't dump each other simultaneously because the fucking spirits won't fucking work out like that. You know what I mean? And it's like this weird. And I was prepared for it. You know what I mean? Because all the research, the dudes said be prepared for that during the fucking adjustment phase, and it just creeped up on me so slowly. I didn't realize I was doing it. It started to do it slowly over a period of about... I noticed it like a week ago, but it was probably doing it for 2 weeks.
He only just told me about it today, though.
Yeah.
I was like, I kind of wish.
Yeah, because then you get paranoid.
Earlier.
You're like, well, I can't tell her because, you know what I mean? She'll dump me. It's exactly what. That's exactly.
So it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I kind of wish you told me.
So it's like this inner paranoias
and
and shit, and like insecurities and shit. You know, it's like it's weird. But they just said it's like that.
Drugs are a hell of a drug. Like
Drugs are a hell of a drug. It's not really a drug. It's a hormone. It's a fucking copy of a fucking bull testosterone. All right? So I'm fucking acting like a damn minotaur. She thought I was joking. No.
Yeah, I thought
It's
you were.
not human.
I thought you were like making a reference to BTK because that's
No.
what he used to say was
No.
he was like a minotaur.
No. Guys use trenbolone, but it wasn't developed for fucking humans. It was developed for cattle.
See, I'm just gonna like not.
It's like the Holy Grail. It burns fat off you.
Every time somebody says that, I remember that book that I read about that dude from like the 19th century or early 20th century that was like sewing goat testicles into dudes' scrotes.
It's like that.
Which
and it only
also not a good idea.
And like
tip.
Dollar for dollar, it fucking yields the greatest fucking results because it's cheap. It comes from the cattle industry. So, and a human dose is tiny compared to what they'd give to a cow or to a fucking bull, you know, or whatever. But it just makes them fucking big and plump and fucking burns all the fat off of them.
And they're probably worried.
They're probably crazy too
about their girlfriend.
They're all cheating on each other. They're all fucking cheating on, but they can't do anything about it. You know, they can't talk
Isn't that
about
funny
it.
to like think of like a bull being like, what's that bitch up
It's
to?
cheating on me.
They're thinking about it, like looking at all the cows.
Yeah,
That
she's
bitch,
plotting against me.
That bitch. That bitch.
Yeah,
All the cows.
fucking funny,
all
man.
The cows are gonna come after me.
yeah. It happened slowly.
That's
You know what I mean? It
hilarious.
happened slowly, and it crept up on me, and I went, "Oh, I'm doing it. This is what they were talking about."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I thought you've been acting weird the last
Yeah.
couple weeks.
It shouldn't get any worse.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure if I was imagining it.
No. No.
Like he's like I said, it's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious
Yeah.
cycle.
I'm halfway through it, so it shouldn't get any worse, and I'm not increasing any dosages, so it should just run like this, or it will resolve. Because the guys say, most dudes fucking who take it for a long period of time, so all that stuff goes away, because it just, they end up adapting to it, and it's all, and the glitches all get resolved out over a period of time. Because it's glitches, what it is. Like hormonal signals being confused.
Matt Siddle said, wait until the neighbor's dog starts talking to you. Uh-oh.
Yeah. No, you know what's real. You know what's real.
Yeah, that's probably not a
I
good
came
thing.
to her with it. I said, fucking, I know this isn't really happening. It's just what it's telling me it's happening. It's like the poltergeist telling me that it's happening. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's not true, though.
Man said you could.
Man said I could.
Man's fucking with you.
Yeah. That goes back to a lot of these weird cases we talked about, these dudes, these serial killers and fucking crazy motherfuckers. And I said earlier before, I said I'd like to see their blood results. Because they might be some kind of a mutant human being, a mutant dude, and maybe he's not producing testosterone. Maybe he's producing a testosterone-like substance that's more like tren, you know, which would fuck you up.
And it turns him into like a psycho.
Turn him into a fucking psycho. Yeah. You take a lot of this, it will. There's dudes that have done it. But they're taking a shit ton. Because some dudes get into this damn spiral where they're like, yeah, I feel good, but then I'm fucking angry and everybody's talking about me, so I have to fucking buck up and get even more fierce, so I'm going to take more to defend myself. Next thing you know, he's taking like fucking 6 times what he should be, and that motherfucker goes off. You know? Because he's got nobody there to fucking tell him to stop.
Yeah, that's.
Exactly.
I was just gonna think that Chris. How do you pronounce his last name? Benoit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on that.
Yeah, but
on trend.
It was, yeah, but I don't think that's what. It wasn't just that. He had a lot of multiple head injuries.
Yeah, I'm sure that didn't help.
That was more of his.
Did we ever do
problem.
a show about that guy? I thought we talked about him because remember, like for a time we were doing kind of like shorter stories, like before the main thing. I thought we talked about him on one of that, but I could be remembering that
They
wrong.
had a dude here who was a bodybuilder. He was fucking huge, and this is just not too long ago, maybe a year ago. He at random attacked a damn family, accusing them of keeping a 12-year-old girl or hostage as some kind of slave. And he killed the parents and then grabbed like the 16-year-old daughter and tortured her to try to find out where that girl was. He was convinced that they had some girl. They didn't know who he was talking about.
Yikes.
And evidently he didn't know them. He saw them or something when he was driving around, and it got into his mind that they had some girl. But I don't know. It might have not just been Tren. He was on Tren. He was big. You're talking about a dude, maybe 260, 270. He was a giant. But he may have had some other mental problems, like he might have had schizophrenia on top of that. There's a lot of weird shit that can happen. And I couldn't imagine being schizophrenic on this. Whew.
Well, more stories like that makes me happy that I hardly ever go outside.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. It's like most of the time you're fine, but it's just, or like people are fine. But I meant like the royal you, like everybody.
Yeah.
But most of the time people are fine, but you never know when like some crazy motherfucker like that is like looking at you going, I bet they have a sex slave in their dungeon.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what?
He shows up like a superhero.
What are
He
you
thinks he's the Punisher. He's got an assault rifle and all kinds of stuff, and he's fucking 270 or something. Yeah. and just fucking crashes down the door, just walks
Can
in.
you imagine? Like, just going about your fucking regular ass day, and some big fucking Hulk like comes in and is like, "You're doing," and I'm just like, "What?"
Yeah, and they had no idea who this dude. He asked first. He says, "Give the girl over," and they're like, "What girl?" And he's naming the girl, and we don't never heard of that. And he busts in and fucking. He was ex-military, too. He was out Army, if I remember correctly. You guys can look it up. We ought to do a show on that.
Crazy people are crazy.
I think it was here in Florida.
Well, that tracks.
Yeah. He didn't look unusual. He just was a big dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying,
white dude.
Florida man. Florida man, doing the things.
Big old white
Florida
dude.
can.
Wasn't very old. Maybe 30.
Murder Hornet said, "Jenny, get a gun." Yeah. Maybe.
She might have one. She might have 2 or 3. You don't know.
You don't know what kind of stuff I got. I'm more an axe murder kind of guy. But I'm just kidding. Don't take that out of context. But yeah, so where do we go from there? How do we segue? I'm trying to think of like how to segue what.
This episode is about Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria.
This sounds boring as shit.
No, it doesn't.
What is it? You tell me. Sell this show to me. What is exciting about Queen Victoria? Why is this?
Why are you gonna put me on the spot?
I'm
like
just saying,
that?
why is this show gonna be badass?
Oh, you're already being like
no. Okay,
you're already
all right,
being like
okay.
confrontational.
It's gonna be a good show.
I thought it was interesting.
Okay.
I thought the same thing that you thought because I was kind of like, well, I'm interested in this kind of like historical kind of stuff. But then like when it won and I was kind of like doing research about it and I was like, well, I don't know how exciting. But then I was reading it and I'm like, oh, actually, this is kind of interesting.
So it
you know
won.
what I mean? Yeah.
It won. Okay. So people voted for this. All right.
Yeah.
Well, then we got to give them what they wanted.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So it's not like I just pulled it out of my ass.
You
Like
never can tell.
I never pull the topics out of my ass. Well, I mean, okay.
I'll go get the video camera. We're going to see when we can pull that shit. We're going to go put that shit on OnlyFans.
Oh, it's going to be that kind of show,
Okay,
is it?
yeah,
Okay.
you know, we're just-
No, I'm just saying that.
All right.
Well, now, what I do, like I said, I have a big, long list. And every time, well, most of the time, if I remember, like most of the time when people give me a recommendation for a topic, I add it to the list. And then every week, I put up a poll with 5 different topics that I take randomly off the list. And whichever one gets the most votes wins. So this one got the most votes, like, easily. I think the other ones didn't, like, only got 1 vote each or something. But this one got, like, a bunch of votes. And I think, like, a bunch of people, like, asked about this one. Zach, particularly, I think he wanted. People voted for a queen. I'm chuckling a bit more than I should.
Who said that, Zach?
No.
Okay.
Guamo. Nothing wrong with a bit of cousin loving, right? I mean, I didn't even realize. I mean, I guess I kind of realized this on some level because I did learn about this in school, but I didn't even realize that Victoria and Albert were first cousins. I thought they were second cousins. But no, they're first cousins.
Danny asked me something, though. I want to get on this. He asked me if I'd ever put dual sport tires or dirt tires on my Buell and go off road with it. Yeah, I would. My SX. I got 2 of them. One of them is the Buell XP9 SX City Cross, and it's kind of set up as a kind of like a little dual sport or like a dirt bike, but it's got street tires on it right now. I think I've got Diablos on there. I think no. What did I have on there? I had Diablos on there for a while, but I put something else on there. I forgot what it was. I think it was a Metzler's, I think. But no, they'd be great with dirt tires on it. There are dudes that have done it. They'll take the S model or the SX model, and then they'll put extended swing arm on there off of that damn. Wait a minute, no, it's not the. I was thinking of the SS model with the fucking extended. No, it was the extended swing arm, I think, off of the Ulysses, I think. It's a little bit longer by a few inches. I may be wrong about that. I thought that was a longer swing arm. Anyway, they were trying to stretch it out a little bit, and they put like a longer travel suspension on it, and they were catching air with it. Good air, like 10, 15 feet. Like a dirt bike. And it was a 1200. So yeah, it can do it. Does it well. Make a good Mad Max motorcycle. Air cooling, you know. You can't damage it. No radiators to damage.
Lion X Warrior says, "No, we heard you. You're a mad axe murderer chick." LOL. Yeah. Well, you know. Bob Apple said, "Do a Robert the Doll episode." Did we do a Robert the Doll episode? Or am I high?
I never heard of Robert the Doll.
It's Key West, right? That's like that supposedly haunted doll. I don't know if we did an entire episode, but I think we did talk about it. Now I gotta look it up.
Yeah.
Now I gotta look it up. Because I'm pretty sure... Because I remember doing research for that. But I don't remember, like, what context that was. Massettle said they all colluded to pick the topic Tom would least like.
Yeah. Yeah, probably tried to get me.
Well, no, I mean, the thing about it is that, I mean, there's a lot of interest. Like, I left out, because, you know, if you go to, like, the thing, there's, you know, all these intricacies of, like, all the, foreign kind of stuff they were getting. And I kind of left a lot of that out because, like, I thought that was kind of, like, not all that exciting. Honestly, I was kind of more interested in her and, like, her influence on society, like the way and kind of like the way that she was brought up and stuff like that. Like I found that stuff a lot more interesting than just kind of like your run-of-the-mill palace type of stuff. Like, hey, we went to France and visited this king or whatever. Like that stuff's not interesting. But yeah, like some of the other stuff I thought was like pretty interesting. And especially like how influential she was. The weird thing about Victoria is that she's probably, well, I don't even know if probably, she's definitely one of the most influential monarchs. I mean, for Christ's sake, there's still like a whole era named after her that people like still talk about. The weird thing about it though is that despite that, it's almost kind of like she's simultaneously and paradoxically like the most influential thing from that period, like the most influential person from that period, but also not, because she really didn't give a shit about, I mean, during her reign, which was very long, you know, they had the Industrial Revolution, they had like all these like this big cultural upheaval in technology and all these other things, and she really didn't seem all that interested in that kind of stuff. And it's just really interesting to me, like just the whole juxtaposition of her not really being into progress or innovation or technology or anything like that, and yet simultaneously being associated with one of the most like biggest cultural upheavals like in history. Like I don't know, like that's like really weird to me. And she was also kind of like really instrumental in the way that the royal family is perceived nowadays as a more like ceremonial type of thing rather than an actual like political force. She was actually instrumental in that too, not on purpose necessarily, but that's just kind of like the way it happened. So we'll kind of get into that as well. So that's why she's influential, I think. And it wasn't even necessarily because of anything she did directly necessarily, but it was just kind of like a lot of things that conspired, you know what I mean? But I don't know, I thought it was kind of like kind of interesting. Yeah, Bob said, oh, okay. I mean, maybe we didn't, but I could have sworn that we talked about Robert the Doll at some point. Like, it was a while back, but I don't remember if we did a show about haunted dolls or if we did a show about, like, Florida hauntings and we talked about it on there, because I know it wasn't a whole show, but I think we talked about it, like, in the context of, like, another show. Maybe it was, like, scary Florida shit, or, I don't know. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, Danny Rowling said, yeah, you did an episode of The Doll and Other Cursed Objects. Yeah, maybe it was a Cursed Objects show. That's right. We did do a Cursed Objects show. And I think we talked about that. We talked about maybe, like, the Dybbuk box and, like, some other shit. I think. I don't know. We've done so many shows. This is episode 321 of just the regular show. I mean, this is not even counting, like, all the movie reviews and shit like that. Oh, okay, yeah. Danny Rowling said, episode 209, Creepy Florida Legends. Okay, thank you for looking that up. Yeah, because I was sure that I had done it on some kind of, like, anthology type show, like, where we had a lot of different topics. So thank you for looking that up.
I was answering a private message from Bee's Nest or fucking Murder Horn. It's the same thing. And, yeah, it's Trent. That's what we were talking about. You must have joined late. It's Trent. It's bad. I don't think I'll do it again. It's very effective. It's cost effective. It's working fast. It's a blend of testosterone, masteron, which is a kind of like it's known for slimming and kind of burning fat off, and tren. And it's in the right ratios where you can just shoot it all at once. But no, it's miserable. I don't like it at all. All the other ones I've ever taken fucking were great. You make you feel great, you know. This is no, don't do it. No.
Don't do it.
Make you real paranoid. You lose a lot of sleep. You don't really feel strong. You are strong, but you don't feel it. You feel kind of crappy. Sometimes it resolves itself and it gets better, and then the side effects kind of go away. But it doesn't for everybody. So I'm just going to do this one bottle, and when it's over, I don't think I'm going to do any more. I'm not sure it's worth the trouble. Because there are other ones I know work that you feel great on them. They cost more. But
Yeah, I mean, that's what I told you. It's like, it's really not worth it if it's just going to make you feel like shit all the time. That's really no way to live.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, unless it evens out and becomes like good, but it's not good so far. I'm about halfway through it. But no, there are other ones that cost more. You got to take more over a longer period of time, but you feel great through the whole thing. You know, positive mental state, feel energetic. You know what I mean? Good sleep and happy. You know, but no, don't do this one. Not unless you're really fucking serious and you have to put on a bunch of muscle real quick, like 5 pounds or 2 pounds a month. You might be able to do it, you know, if you're eating right, working enough. But maybe more, but I don't know, it would be dose dependent. I'm not taking that much, and it's hell. I don't like it at all. Just getting through it, that's all.
Lionx Warrior said, Queen Victoria was an obese shagathon. She had a Scotch soldier lover, yep, that's right, and a subcontinental Indian military lover. She was all about getting it on. Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
I mean, rumored, but probably. This was after Albert died. Because I kind of feel like she's famous for mourning like the rest of her life after Albert died, which she did, but she wasn't celibate after that, I don't think. You know what I mean? So there was that. And yeah, she only got fat later. Mostly after Albert died. Like, she just kind of like holed up in the palace and like just started eating bonbons and stuff, and then got like super fat. And plus, I didn't know this about her either, but she was super short, 4'11". She was a tiny little thing. But they said even though she was that small, they said that she just kind of had a very, very grand presence, even though she was a little tiny thing. And I mean, when she was young, she was slim, obviously, but yeah, she got like pretty heavy later on, like after Albert died.
She was cute when she was young too, from what I remember.
She was, yeah. Well, like I said, she ascended to the throne when she was real young. And there's like paintings of her. There's paintings of her from like when she was youthful. You know what I mean? But I think people remember her nowadays as like the old fat lady.
Yeah. Is this one that just died?
No, that's that's Elizabeth.
That's Elizabeth.
That's
okay,
Elizabeth is actually Victoria's great granddaughter.
I was thinking of Elizabeth, right? The one that just died.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in the 60s or 70s, she was super cute.
Victoria was cute when she was young too, at least according to the paintings. I mean, there were photographs of her from her later life.
Yeah.
But you know, they didn't have photography, I don't think, when she started out. But
yeah, I think these are all bad people, though. I got a feeling that they're.
Yeah, I mean,
I got a feeling they're basically gangsters.
I mean, the thing about Victoria, I think her greatest sin was not. I don't think she was a bad person. She seemed like a very honest person. She seemed like a very forthright person. But I think she was very sheltered, and I think that she didn't really. I guess because she was privileged and she didn't really have to, I think she didn't really care all that much about the plight of regular people.
I was under the impression that the men from all these royal families, doesn't even matter if they're British or not, if you're in a royal family, the men are scum. They're just, you know, I was under that impression.
Yeah.
They're the kind of dudes that would just pull up and grab your wife and throw her in the back seat and fuck her and then drop her off a couple blocks away. They were like,
I mean, I'm sure probably most of them were like that. I mean, I'm sure there were exceptions. Yeah. Like I said, I don't think Victoria didn't strike me, at least what I read about her, she didn't strike me as being like particularly shitty or autocratic or anything like that. I think she was just kind of more sheltered, like I said, and privileged more than anything else. She never lived like a regular person, so she couldn't really relate to regular people, but I don't think that she was like mean on purpose. I think like she did the best that she could under the circumstances. But some of her views were kind of weird, but not as weird as like some other people's at the time, I guess. So I don't know. So like I said, I kind of found that sort of interesting about her as well. But you can kind of see where she was coming from, you know.
Yeah.
Rick Shaw said, I watched the Queen's funeral. That's Elizabeth. Not a royalist, but it was pretty epic. Yeah, I didn't see it, actually. But, yeah, and I didn't realize... I mean, I realized that Victoria and Elizabeth II were related, but I didn't realize that Elizabeth II was Victoria's great-great-granddaughter. And actually, Elizabeth II is now the longest reigning monarch. 70 years, almost 71 years. Previous to that, Victoria was the longest running. She reigned for 63 years. So she had the record until Elizabeth came along and went many years more. But yeah, so there's that. And again, like I said, Victoria, probably one of the most influential, definitely one of the most influential in Britain, and, you know, probably one of the most influential in the Western world as well. But yeah, 4'11". I didn't even realize that. She doesn't look that short in the paintings, I guess. Yeah, and her and Albert also had 9 kids. Now, a bunch of them died. Like they all got to adulthood, but some of them died pretty young. So, are we ready to get into okay, before we do that, I wanted to give a thanks. I don't think DJ Maniac is here, but I wanted to thank DJ Maniac. He sent me he had messaged me about this anthology book that looks like it's called Found, and it's like it's all found footage, like, but they're stories, you know what I mean, like written stories. And the book cover is like so cool, and it looks like an old VHS. And he bought it for me. He bought me the ebook, and like it's in my Kindle library. So thank you very much for that. I'll probably be reading it soon and reviewing it. For the next few weeks, I'm gonna be doing like Halloween books. Like I found some like Halloween anthology stories or like books that I wanted to cover, like for my book review thing. So I'll be doing that like the next few weeks. I think the next one that I'm gonna do is called Literally Dead. And it's all Halloween stories, I think. But that's the next one I'm going to do. But I'll probably do it like early in November, like after Halloween is over. So there's that. Yeah, so are we ready to get into this? Or are you going to like talk about...
No, go ahead.
Tammy said, the movie Victoria and Abdul, yeah, we'll get into that like toward the end, was a pretty good film. Don't know how much of it was true. Yeah, I think a lot of it was supposition. They do actually know a lot about Victoria's life because she was... she kept a diary like pretty much every day from like the time she was a teenager until she died. So yeah, they have like records of how she actually like felt about shit and everything like that. She was very, very like good about writing everything down, like how she felt about stuff and what happened and everything. So they actually do know a lot about her life. But some stuff, I kind of think that her daughter, Beatrice, I think one of her daughters, like after Victoria died, like Beatrice, she was like the literary executor, and I think that she transcribed some of the stuff, and she maybe like didn't transcribe some of the stuff that she thought would be embarrassing, like to her mom, and I think she burned some of the shit also. Some of the stuff has been recovered, but we don't really know. But there are rumors that not only that after Albert died, and like I said, it's not that scandalous because, you know, her husband was dead. She was a widow. That she hooked up with the manservant, that Scottish dude, John Brown, and that later on, after he died, then she maybe was hooking up with another quote-unquote manservant who she called her secretary, like an Indian, like a guy from India, that went with her everywhere. So, maybe. I don't know, but you know that's what the rumor was, and I would find it. I mean, and like I said, you can't blame the woman. You know what I mean? It's like she
didn't have any responsibilities. Come on, she had money.
Well, and that's the thing.
She needed company.
Yeah.
Shit, she's gonna just be locked up in the house anyway.
Well, yeah, and the thing about her, and particularly like we'll get into in a second, like the way that she was brought up. I mean, she was brought up like from birth. They knew that she was probably eventually gonna be queen one day, so. I mean, she had a very lonely life, so she seemed to like really latch on to people like to have, because she knew that there was a lot of people she couldn't trust and stuff like that because of how her family like was. So if she found somebody she liked that was like honest with her and was trustworthy, then she would like latch onto that person and like be super, super loyal to them because she didn't have much of that in her life.
I heard that the Japanese imperial family is even worse, that their versions of like the empress. I think the last one that they had, or maybe 2 of them back, that she was insane. She went crazy because they made them do the same ritual things over and over again. They're basically prisoners. They can't go anywhere. They got to stay in that damn palace.
That's what I mean. I kind of, I mean, I kind of feel like
she didn't really want to be in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to her. They kind of silenced it. She's probably crazy in there still.
That's the thing about, I mean, being in a royal family, it's like, it must be nice to have all that money and like not have to worry about that. So, you know, that's cool. But also being in the public eye, but you can't, like I said, this is kind of about like the same thing as being like super, super famous, which, yeah, the money's awesome, but you can't have anything approaching a normal life, which would probably drive you a little bit crazy after a while.
I think in Japan, they can't leave the palace.
Yeah.
So they're prisoners.
See, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. I mean, as nice as the palace is, eventually you're kind of like, can I just walk down to 7-Eleven or something like that? And it's like they won't even let you.
That's and I think she
up.
was a normal woman before she went in there. She was just married into it. And she went crazy. This is back in the, I think, in the 80s or the 90s. You guys can look up what happened to her eventually. Maybe they retired her or got rid of her. I don't know. But she was, like, it was well known, even in the Japanese press, that she was, like, losing her marbles and fucking trying to escape. And
most people would lose their marbles in that situation, I feel like.
She would just cry constantly.
Yeah.
You know, fucking.
I mean, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Tammy said that she only watched that movie, Victorian Abdul, because Eddie Izzard was in it. Oh, well, now I definitely have to watch it because I love him. Rick Shaw said Queen Elizabeth II met 13 different U.S. presidents. Damn. That's a lot. I can't even imagine, like, being a queen or being, like, something for that long. 70 fucking years.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. I don't want to do anything for 70 years. Fuck that. Like I said, money's nice, I'm sure, but not being in the public eye, I'd rather be rich and not famous. I don't want to be famous. That would suck. Because you can't go anyplace. You know?
Yeah.
You can't go anyplace. All right, so let's get into this, and hopefully Tom won't get too bored.
Yeah. We'll see.
No, it's interesting. You can, you know about history and shit like that.
Yeah.
You can just kind of, it's like I said, I tried to stick to like a lot of the stuff that I thought was interesting, like a lot of the cultural kind of stuff that was going on, like her upbringing and everything like that. So, you know, I left out a lot of kind of more intricate kind of stuff that I didn't think was all that exciting, but you know what I mean? So, all right. So Victoria is actually not her first name, which is another thing I didn't know. Her first name is actually Alexandrina. She was named after one of her godparents, who was Tsar Alexander I of Russia. Victoria was actually her middle name, I guess, or her second name, because Victoria was also her mom's name. So that's what they named her. So she was actually born at Kensington Palace in May of 1819. Now, Victoria's grandfather was George III, who at that time, like when she was a kid, was the reigning king of England. So her dad was Prince Edward, who was the Duke of Kent. And her mom, Victoria, was actually German, and she became, like, the Duchess of Kent, obviously, when she married Prince Edward. Now, her dad, Prince Edward, was actually the next in line to be king. But he died in 1820 when Victoria was still a baby, like she was less than a year old. A week after that, her grandfather died, who was king. And he was succeeded by his eldest son, who would have been George IV. So Victoria, at that point, even though she was still a baby, was third in line to the throne. After, like, two other, I think they were uncles, Frederick and William. William had a second daughter named Princess Elizabeth of Clarence. She died at 12 weeks, so she would have been the thing. She hadn't died as a baby, but then, you know. So Victoria's fourth in line, but then she went back to third. Now, the Duke of York died in 1827, and then George IV died in 1830. So then the throne goes to their next surviving brother, who was William. So William was king, and then Victoria, I think she was 13 years old. She became what they called the heir presumptive. So it's like basically
they think she's going to be
she's going to be the heir. They're like, yeah pretty much. So she grew up pretty much her whole entire life. Like I said, I think she was 13 when she became the heir presumptive. So her whole entire life, they knew that eventually she was going to be, you know, the next queen or whatever. So Victoria actually later described her childhood as melancholy. That was the word that she used. Her mom, the Duchess of Kent, whose name was also Victoria, was I don't want to say tyrannical. Some of the things I said she was overprotective, but I think it goes way beyond overprotective. The thing about her mom, the Duchess of Kent, was that she had this consort comptroller dude named Sir John Conroy. Everybody thinks that probably Conroy and the mom were fucking. I mean, probably they were. But Conroy sounds like a real douche. So Conroy and the mom came up with this thing called the Kensington system. That's what they called it. And it was this big, elaborate set of rules that that little Victoria, had to abide by. Basically, she was not allowed to hang out with other kids. She wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody that her mom or Conroy did not approve of, which was pretty much everybody, including like her own father's family. So, you know, there was that. She had to sleep in the same room with her mom. And basically during playtime, she was only allowed to play with dolls or like her dog. They didn't let her play with other kids or anything like that. So she was very, very, very isolated.
Weird.
And she was home tutored, so she didn't even get to like go to school, or she didn't get to hang out with any kids her own age.
What is it they didn't want her to know?
Well, one of the things they were trying to do, and Conroy in particular, he spent a lot of her teenage years basically, like, he would give her tasks which were essentially impossible, and then when she couldn't do them, he would say stuff to her like, well, you're obviously too stupid to be queen. What they were trying to do was they were essentially like trying to break her down psychologically so that she would be weak and easy for them to control, because they knew that eventually she might be the monarch one day.
Oh, so they're making her a puppet.
And they wanted to make her a puppet, is essentially what they were doing. I mean, I don't know if they'd come out and admit that, but that seems like what they were trying to do. Right. You know, because she was just a kid.
Right.
So they thought, if we can just make her insecure and doubt herself and like...
That probably backfired.
It did, spoiler alert.
It's not how the human mind works, and
No.
we have willpower.
Thank you, Emily. You guys should review Jacob's Ladder if y'all ever get a chance. We did Jacob's Ladder, did we not?
I thought we did.
I'm pretty sure we've done so many movies, but I'm pretty sure we did Jacob's Ladder. But I think it was like a long time ago.
If we didn't, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Write it down.
I will. But I'm pretty sure we've done it,
we
but we'll check.
So, yeah.
I just don't remember when it was. It was a while back. Like I said, we've done so many movies that I forget which ones we've done. You know what I mean. So, so that's basically what they would do. They would just kind of like, they isolated her from everybody and told her how stupid she was all the time, because they thought that would like break her down eventually. So 1830, the mom and Conroy, the douche, took Victoria on a tour across England. Now, she was still only a teenager at this point. So they basically went all around like different towns and shit like that. And they did this like a few years in succession. Like they did it again in 1832, like 1833, blah, blah, blah. Now, King William was still king at this point, and he got super, super pissy because every time they did one of these tours, everybody really liked Victoria. Like, you know, all the public and everybody that she met was like really, really charmed by her. Like I said, she was, you know, pretty young at this point, like 13, 14, 15, something like that. And everybody really liked her, and the king got really butthurt because he's like, oh, seems more like, she's more like my equal or my rival rather than my, you know, heir apparent or whatever. So he was getting like really butthurt about it. And so there was that. And then Victoria also, she didn't particularly like doing these tours either because, you know, one, she had to hang out with her mom and Conroy, you know, who she hated. And also she's like, it was just really, really like constant traveling and constant like meeting all these people and shit like that. And it just wore her out, and she didn't really like it. So she tried to get out of it. You know what I mean? And she's basically like, hey, the king doesn't even want me here. He's like constantly pissing and moaning. But her mom was like, oh, fuck him. He's just jealous of you because everybody likes you better than him. And basically forced her to keep going with it. Now, during one of these tours in 1835, Victoria got really, really sick, like some kind of fever. I don't know if it was typhoid or something like that. Now, Conroy, because he's a peach, he's a real prize, he basically said, oh, cut it out, you're faking. you know. But then they were like, oh no, she actually really is sick. After they determined that she really was sick, then they went in there because I think she was 16 at this point. When she was like really ill and vulnerable, the mom and Conroy both go in there and like started badgering her to make Conroy her private secretary, like make him work for her. Like while she was sick, like do it, like sign this contract, shit like that. And basically she was, I mean, good for her. She was only 16 at the time and was sick and was probably like, you know, tired of all this fucking touring, but she was like, absolutely not, because she fucking hated that guy. And matter of fact, one of the first things she did when they made her queen was she banned him from her presence, which I thought was like super awesome.
That's good. She fought back.
Yeah, like I said, so she did have some fortitude. I mean, she got to be queen like very young, and she was very inexperienced, but you know, she kind of got pushed around some, but she absolutely would not let them push her around, because her mom and Conroy, she actually really hated them. She always hated Conroy, and actually she didn't really reconcile with her mom until like way later, because she blamed them for like fucking up her entire childhood.
It reminds me of something Nietzsche said in one of his books. I can paraphrase it. If you take a kid and you just let them grow wild, they tend to be weak and self-destructive. But if you take a kid and then weigh them down with a bunch of fucking nonsense and restrictions like religion and discipline, it takes them a while, but they'll eventually strip all that stuff off of them and think their way out of it. And what you have when you're done is a fucking well-defended dragon. And that's what they did. They just didn't realize that that's what happened. You know what I mean? They didn't read Nietzsche. You know, that can happen. Yeah, some kids it might break them, but the ones that it doesn't break, you're just going to make a well-defended dragon. You know.
Yeah, you're
making them stronger and more independent.
And you're making somebody that's going to hate you like forever also, which is what happened in
Well, they have the fortitude and the discipline and the willpower to get out of any restrictions you put on them.
Yeah.
You know? And then they're able to think their way through fucking mental traps that you put on them, so they become real wily. You know, they're like, oh no, you can't tell me to do that, because the reason why you're teaching me this is to restrict me, and so that, you know what I mean, they can get out of ideologies because they understand it. But Nietzsche was much better at describing it than I've just described it. It'd take him a couple paragraphs to talk about it. It was real poetic, at least the English translation.
Bethina said, I only want to be isolated by my own hand, not anyone else's. Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of feel like one of the things about why a lot of people like that have all this money but are still miserable like that is because I think happiness doesn't necessarily come from money. Happiness comes from the amount of control you feel like you have over your life. I mean, obviously, if you have a lot of money, then you have a lot more control than somebody that's broke. But by the same token, if you are in the royal family, like, yeah, you have a lot of money, but you also have all of these strictures and rules and shit like that you have to follow. And so you feel like your life isn't really your own. So, you know what I mean? So they feel like they don't have a lot of control over their own lives, because they really don't, you know? But probably less so nowadays, because they can mostly do what they want. But, you know, I kind of feel like back in this time,
they didn't have to keep up appearances like they do now. They don't have to keep up appearances today like they did back
That's
then.
What I'm saying. Like nowadays, yeah, they still do, but it's like it's not the same as it
Everybody knows
was.
they're just people.
Yeah, it's like back then they were held to like a much higher standard. I feel like.
Back then their interpretation of Christianity was that they were ruling by divine right. So their births were actually kind of divine births, like Jesus. No sex was involved, even. So that's what peasants may have believed at certain periods. But I don't think everybody else believed that shit. But a lot of that stuff about in the American Declaration of Independence, it doesn't really fucking translate to today. It starts off certain part of all men having been created equal. It's not really what they were talking about. Is that all men are not of divine birth? Is what they were talking about then, and which was a huge insult to the royal class back in England in the 1700s, because that's directly saying your parents were fucking. And they didn't, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that because they would evidently deny this. I can't understand. But they still do that in North Korea today. Kim Jong-un evidently doesn't shit. He eats, but he doesn't shit.
I mean, he must be very constipated.
You know, so...
After all this time.
Yeah, so, you know...
It's
dynasties dynasties and monarchies, when religion gets mixed into them, always... They believe in hokey shit. You know, pharaohs and shit. Even the Roman emperors, when they started claiming that they were divine, they would fucking make some stupid claims, you know, that they could talk directly to Jupiter and shit like that, you know.
I don't know. There's a certain type of person that always likes to have something that's somebody's like a human but is like better than a human, like to look up to.
Right. In the case of like a lot of Western European monarchies, it was divine birth, divine rule by divine right, that kind of shit. So they're saying they were born the same way Jesus was, basically.
Yeah, essentially.
So God came in and to the mama, and they use that because in the Old Testament it basically kind of says that, and it probably reinforces it back in the New Testament. I'd have to really do the research. I'd probably talk to Dr. Price. It says God has given you these kings as your rightful ruler. So in other words, to go against a king is to go against God. Always. That's the natural order of life. And you know, that shit wouldn't fly today. But that flew back then. If you had a king, that's because God willed it. God allowed that king to be in charge. Bad or good, didn't matter. If you had a bad king, that's because God willed it. So you just couldn't go against a monarch.
And Victoria still, you know, as much as she had like some cool views about some stuff, but she still like kind of upheld that kind of thing. She didn't really get democracy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is all totally antithetical to the American way. Or at least the original American way. It's back now. They've just replaced it with experts and fucking oligarchs and fucking scientists and shit. That's the new ruling That's the new ruling monarchs. They just veiled it. And the monarchs are still in there. British royal families are in charge of the United States, certain aspects of it. You know, they got money. You know, money rules the shit now. That's part of the problem, you know, because the Union was designed by its constitution to be a classless society where everybody had equal access to the law. That ain't happening. No. If you got a shit ton of money, you will never see the inside of a courtroom. Never. And that was never intended.
Well, it's a nice ideal, but in practice it doesn't really work out that way.
Not until revolutions happen. And they eventually always happen. It's in one way or another.
But yeah, I'm saying, like I said, even though Victoria, I don't even think that she was ahead of her time. She wasn't. I think she was very of her time. Yeah. But she was actually maybe a little bit behind the times because, like I said, the Industrial Revolution was happening. There were a lot of like cultural upheavals, like, you know, movements more toward democracy, and she just didn't want any part of that, or she didn't really get it. Mm-hmm. She still held on to that old school, you know, divine right type of thing. Yeah. I don't think she was particularly religious. She didn't strike me as particularly religious, but she did think that, you know, we're you know, ruling over you because we're supposed to, and that's kind of like that's what we're supposed to do. You know what I mean? It was that.
And I also don't want people to think that I'm anti-royalist. I actually think that this kind of stuff is actually part of the British makeup that should be this way. But when you look at history, ruling classes and monarchs and dynasties got changed out over time. New ones could appear and form. You can get rid of the old ones. So anything's possible. But England is a monarchy. I don't even think it's constitutional monarchy, is it?
Yeah, it is.
It is constitutional.
Yeah.
Monarchy? Okay. So
I mean, technically, on paper, the monarchy doesn't really have any power.
Yeah,
and Victoria, this was kind of like the first I mean, her reign actually like ushered that in, where they became more of like a ceremonial. Like they could kind of say, "Hey, I don't like that," but you know, the Parliament and everything were like, "We don't give a shit." You know, they could just kind of do whatever they want.
That's just in public. Really, if you ask me, the monarchies in England is the American equivalent to would be an oligarchs. They're oligarchs basically, because they still have access to a shit ton of money, a lot of them, and they have a lot of social power. So they can link up with oligarchs and get certain things done. So they're still powerful. You know, they're powerful players over there. Don't doubt that, not one bit. And they're powerful here. They got a lot of money. This is like the church. The Catholic Church, they got a shit ton of fucking power. They got a lot of fucking real estate, and they have their own bank that's very easy to launder money through. You got intel agencies that have been laundering money through that Vatican bank for fucking about a century. Nah, not that, 70 years. So they're important too. But, you know, it's not discussed. It's not discussed. If you got a bunch of money you need to launder and you got black funding and you're a federal agency in the United States, you can just donate to the church and they got their own bank and they can fucking and they can launder money for you. That's what they do.
Zach says, knowing how Victoria was raised and how she was later in life, I get the vibe dealing with her was like dealing with someone with bipolar. Yeah, I mean, she didn't seem like crazy necessarily, but I mean, she had a lot of tragedy in her life. She had kind of like a fucked up, like a weird childhood. She seemed like mostly normal, but she was kind of very emotional and kind of stubborn. But most people that met her thought she was like, you know, very intelligent and shit like that. But I don't know. She, like I said, she seemed like an interesting person. So, okay. 1836. Victoria had a maternal uncle named Leopold, and he'd been king of the Belgians, for a while. Now, he wanted to marry her off to Prince Albert, who I believe was his nephew? Yeah, because I guess it was his brother, Ernest the First Duke, who was like a duke, and that was like his son. So Albert was actually Victoria's first cousin, which, like I said, that was shit that they did back then, keeping it all in the family. You know, there you go. Got a wig.
And Michael Caine. Talking about the royal family, I gotta get British on me.
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about it. Yeah. Michael Caine is with us this evening.
Now you don't look as much like Michael Caine because you have the.
Were you fucking him?
Yeah, she was probably.
Yeah.
But so he's like basically, you know, you're in the royal family, you don't really get a choice as to who you marry. So basically, Leopold, the uncle, was like, hey, why don't you marry my nephew, Albert? So Leopold kind of arranged for Victoria's mom to kind of have all these relatives over in 1836, and they were going to introduce the two of them. Now, interestingly, Victoria and Albert hit it off. Like, Victoria was only 17 at the time, because normally, like I said, they just married people off for, you know, strategic purposes, to unite families or to prevent wars and shit like that. And that was probably the case in this when they set this up too, but actually the two of them did really seem to like each other, and they really did seem to hit it off very famously. Now, interestingly, William, who was, I guess, was king at the time, yeah, because she hadn't been coronated yet, he did not want Victoria and Albert to marry. His pick was this other guy who was like Prince Alexander of the Netherlands, who was actually one of the sons of the Prince of Orange. Now, Victoria met Albert. She knew what all of this stuff was going on. Like I said, I think she was about 17 at this point. And she's like, yeah, I know that I have to get married off to somebody or something like that. But when she met Albert, she like really dug him. And she wrote, it's so cute because she like wrote in her journal, and you can tell she's a 17-year-old girl, because she writes that Albert is extremely handsome. His hair is about the same color as mine. His eyes are large and blue. He has a beautiful nose. She didn't say a nice ass. That would have been really funny.
Yeah, he got a tight ass boob. Because, you know,
she was probably thinking it. She just didn't write it down. She was probably a freak.
I was talking about that shit with fucking Sophie, and I even mentioned it on the show. Because fucking she brought that shit up. 70% of these women are into this fucking booty magic with these boys. I can't understand it, trying to put something up in a man's booty. They got these weird fixations.
Yeah, you've been talking to Sophie about putting stuff up dudes' butts?
Yeah, she got on that subject. I was like, what? talking about. Yeah, I ain't gonna spill her business.
I think you already cut it.
I spilled her business. It's all right.
Zach says also supposedly the Prince Albert dick piercing was named after Albert himself, supposedly because he had one to keep his supposedly large one in place. Yeah, what'd he do? Like hook it up in his taint or something?
Yeah.
Is that what? That's what I heard too, but I don't know if that's true.
I thought it fucking hooked up into his underwear. He had a fucking button
maybe
sewed into his underwear so he could hold shit and stuff.
so it wouldn't like flop around.
Yeah, those dudes, they call it dressing right or something, or dressing right.
Do you dress to the right or to the
something
left?
like that, where they try to fold their dicks up so you couldn't see it because it was supposed to be flat. You didn't want to look like you had a big dick. Look, man, they're British, all right? Fucking, whatever.
Well, I guess they thought it was like uncouth.
It's like tacky and shit.
Going around. Yeah, well, it is kind of tacky.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still kind of tacky nowadays.
No, let that shit fucking let that shit bulge. No, I'm gonna
that's why dudes don't walk around in like tight ass leggings.
I'm gonna go ahead and fucking side with the leather daddy scene and those dudes with the art that they draw. There's some fucking dude like that and that's just wrapped all the way around like a damn fucking huge ass beer can going around his fucking leg and shit. That's much better than not having it. Like if somebody gave me a choice, says, would you rather be born this dude here or this one? I says, yeah, give me that one with that shit wrapping around. I'd rather be that guy. Rather be that guy right there.
I'll just hang it over my shoulder.
Hang that shit like that. Be
like the sausage is hanging into butcher shop.
That's right.
Hanging in a loop like under there.
Then you can humble brag about it. Man, I can't stand this shit. I can't put this over. You humble brag.
Have to like take it out and put it in your pocket.
My dick is too fucking big. I can't stand that shit. Isn't that terrible when your dick fucking is over on the side and shit? Look like an apple. Like a big old apple bulge. And then they go, yeah, I can't stand that shit. It's just fucking unreasonable. Like a fucking fist on the end of there, man. That's too big. None of these women will fuck with me. I know, man. I couldn't get a date to save my life. They're all too little. They're all too small, these women. Yeah.
You know that's how that shit's going down.
That's how you're gonna humble brag about it, yeah.
Well, some girls do that too.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so skinny.
No, I'm so skinny. My tits are so big. I can't stand it. I can't do anything with these. Yeah.
Although I feel
can't find a bra. They're too big.
I
feel these bras are too small.
Well, yeah, but when your tits are big, it is kind of a pain in the ass, though.
Yeah, but when you paid for them.
That's true. But I'm just saying it is kind of a pain in the ass. Like if they're naturally big and you didn't ask for that shit, then yeah.
No, they got girls with fucking 3,600 fucking 3,600 cc implants going. I can't stand it. They don't make bras big enough for me. You know. Yeah.
I know your life's so different.
Yeah.
Zach said, hey, Victoria did write about how amazing the sex with Albert was in a roundabout way. Yeah, I mean, she wrote about a lot of stuff like that. So, yeah, her and Albert were really, really into each other, to be honest. They were both, she thought that he was super, super hot. He looked like, I mean, from the paintings, I'm sure, the paintings look better than real life. Yeah. But, he looked like a pretty handsome dude, when he was young. Like I said, they were kids when they met. I don't know how much older he was than her. I don't think he was that much older. She was 17 when they first met. But, yeah, she called him, delightful. Said he had fine teeth. Like I said, she didn't say nice ass, but maybe she was thinking that. I hope she was. But the other guy, the one that the king wanted her to marry, Alexander, all she said about him was very plain. Wah, wah. Yeah. So
that's what he said about her?
Yeah.
Who said that about her?
No, nobody said that about her. She said that about the other guy that the king wanted her to marry.
Right, yeah. She wasn't into it.
She wasn't into it. And I've seen a painting of that guy, and he's, okay looking, too. So, I don't know. Like I said, paintings hard to tell, because I'm sure they make you look better. Yeah. They make you look better than you actually look.
They put them damn filters.
Yeah, it's like the Instagram filter of the 19th century.
Yeah, where you pay a guy a little bit more and you got a fucking fantastic name. Oh, no, I'll make you look great. Don't worry.
It's can you have me not have this acne and double chins and shit like that?
Yeah, can you make me look good?
Yeah, maybe look a little
make it look
shave
good.
some pounds off. You know what I mean? Give me some nicer hair.
Yeah.
Make my teeth nice. But yeah, so Victoria was so smitten by Albert that she actually wrote to Leopold, her uncle, who had set the whole thing up, and wrote him a letter pretty much gushing about, you're so awesome for setting us up. She says about Albert, he possesses every quality that could be desired to render me perfectly happy. He's so sensible, so kind, and so good, and so amiable too. He has besides the most pleasing and delightful exterior and appearance that you can possibly see. Like I said, she thought he was hot. Now, so she's only 17 at this point, so she's kind of like, well, she thought she was too young to get married, and she didn't want to rush into it either. So they didn't really do like the whole formal engagement thing, but they're like, okay, well, that's probably going to happen at some point in the future. So Victoria turns 18 in May of 1837. Oh, look, Pookie's on the show.
Pookie on the show.
Pookie's on the show. She's like, yep, I'm just putting up with it. She just puts up with it.
Yeah, she's like, fucking, I gotta
go.
You were hanging out next to me. You don't want to come up on the lap. She's looking at me going, why did you pick me up?
Yeah, she's like, I don't like that.
Yeah, don't pick me up.
I was just sitting here on the floor. I'm a floor kitty. She's not really a lap kitty. Like, she'll come to you and, like, give you a headbutt or, like, sit up on my desk or something like that. But it's like, if you pick her up, she's like,
David's asking if I'm using Chia Pet shampoo. No, this is my Michael Caine wig. I had to get British for this show. All right.
Yeah, that's the only... He didn't want to do the Mozart wig. Well,
No.
Mozart wasn't British. He was German or Austrian or something.
He's Austrian or something.
I thought he was... Wasn't he Austrian?
Something.
Or German? I can't remember.
He was some kind of German.
I read... He's some kind of German.
Yeah.
One of those kinds of
Yeah.
Germans. There's lots of different kinds.
They're all the same.
Danny Rowling said, isn't it custom for the king to deflower his daughters? I don't... Probably in some cultures, I'm sure.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. It would be a little bit weird.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about it is that even in royal families where incest is kind of common, well, it's not even incest. It's kind of more like just cousins, which, like I said, is still weird, but it's not that weird. I mean, they're related, but they're not as related as, like, brothers and sisters. Now, ancient Egypt, I think they were doing brothers and sisters.
In Rome, too.
And ancient Rome. That's weird.
Yeah.
And and from an evolutionary standpoint, too, like, most people... Well, the thing about it, okay... From what I read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but brothers and sisters that are genetically related, as well as stepbrothers and stepsisters that were raised together, they are grossed out by the thought of having sex with one another, right? And that's kind of like an evolutionary thing. Apparently that...
To make sure it doesn't happen.
To make sure that it doesn't happen, because usually people that you are raised with are genetically related to you, and that's not a good idea because of, genetic abnormalities. However, brothers and sisters... who were like separated at birth, like raised apart, and then meet later on in life, they tend to like really, really dig each other, and sometimes and they're not really sure like exactly why that is. So it's not necessarily so much a genetic thing as like a raised together type of thing.
Well, if you looked at
that's what I heard.
If you look at like King Ramses back in the Egyptian Empire phase, he evidently had thousands of children. Okay, he had hundreds of wives and thousands of children, or maybe even tens of thousands of children. But he was stocking his government with these children, so he had his sons in all these positions.
Yeah.
But evidently, a lot of these wives and concubines that he had access to, hundreds and hundreds of women, were also like daughters. But I don't think he knew those daughters. You know what I mean? I don't think they were raised together because he had such a large breeding pool of fucking people out there that Ramses was having sex with. But evidently some of his brides were daughters. Weird.
That is pretty weird.
But like I said, he probably didn't meet him until they're 18 or 19, and it's just like another stranger. But they were trying to, it all had to do with government loyalty more than anything else. You're not going to betray the king if you're directly related to him, and that's really what they were doing. It wasn't it wasn't really kink.
Yeah, it wasn't like freaky in that way. It was just like, it was almost like a pragmatic.
But they didn't want any betrayals. So you're like, well, I can't foment an uprising against the king. He's my dad. I'm in charge. He put me in charge of his army. That was
Although kids kill their dads all the time.
Yeah, but they were just. It's a lot less
yeah,
likely.
I know.
It's a lot less likely. And they raised them separately. They were almost kind of like a military type situation. So what you're talking about, really, in terms of Hollywood, you're talking about fucking Meng the Merciless on fucking Planet Mongo with his fucking daughter, Princess Aura, which my take of the movie is that he was hitting Aura, and that was his daughter.
Yeah.
Didn't you get that take from that?
Yeah.
She's coming on to him, coming on to daddy and shit like that, and asking for fucking other men, and asking for fucking give me Flash, please. Oh, no, your tastes are far too dangerous, But evidently, some shit was going on there. That they were all perverts in Flash Gordon. That's why I fucking love that movie, man. Like, I was watching this. These motherfuckers are kinky, and they were kinky in the original fucking source material. Go back and watch old Flash Gordon. Drugs and sex and shit.
I gotta tell you, with that Michael Caine wig and the beard and the mustache, you
Yeah.
kind of look like a 70s porn star now.
Yeah, okay. I'm done with this.
You should get a leisure suit.
It's too fucking hot.
Hey, I wear a wig all night. And I have hair underneath. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm not even bald.
I could shave it.
No, I can't. I wouldn't look good with a bald head. What are you talking
Well,
about?
you wear a wig.
Well, I can't wear a wig
Look
all
who's
the time.
throwing toys.
Did she throw it?
She
at you?
threw me one. Yeah. And then she didn't catch it when I threw it back.
She's like, I just wanted to throw it at you.
Yeah, right.
All right. So Victoria turns 18 in May of 1837. And it so happened that less than a month later, William IV croaked. He was the king. He was 71 years old. And just like that, Victoria became the queen. How she found out, she was sleeping, and they woke her up at like 6 in the morning. And she just, like, the Archbishop of Canterbury was there, like, all these people came, and she just, like, comes out in her little dressing gown or whatever. And they're like, oh, by the way, your uncle kicked the bucket, or your grandfather or whoever it was, like, kicked the bucket, and you're queen now. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're in your jammies still. So, yeah, that's how she found out. I thought it was kind of, like, funny. So, like I said, one of the first things that she did, well, I think the first thing that she did was she didn't want to go by her first name anymore, Alexandrina, and she went by her second name, which was Victoria. So, she just didn't want to use it. And I think also that she wanted Conroy, like that dude, like, she's like, yeah, I just want to make it, my first queenly decree is I don't want to see that motherfucker's face ever again. So, he was still around, like, because he worked for her mom more than anything. So he was still around, but she was like, yeah, I don't want him. It was kind of like she filed a restraining order. Like, he wasn't allowed to become within, like, certain distance of her or something like that. It was something like that. So basically, on the day that that they did the coronation, the prime minister at the time, who was a Whig, his name was Lord Melbourne, and he was actually, like, really nice to her. Like, he came out and said, congratulations. And it's like, oh, you're going to do so good and all this other kind of stuff. And I think that this was the first time that she had ever, because he was, like, her, like, a dad figure to her, like, pretty much, because she didn't really have one, because her dad died when she was little. And, and Conroy had been around, but he just, like, shit on her all the time, telling her how stupid she was. So she had never had, like, a man, like a father figure in her life tell her, oh, I'm so proud of you and you're going to do a good job. You know what I mean? So I think this was, like, really weird and, like, kind of nice, like, kind of a nice change. So her and the prime minister, Lord Melbourne, actually became close friends. Lord Melbourne, I guess his wife had died, so he was a widower. And so he kind of, like, saw her as, like, a daughter to him, because, like I said, she was only, like, 18. So the two of them, like, got really close, and he was also, like, really important because he was a political advisor. I mean, like I said, she didn't have a lot of political experience. She was just a kid, really. And so he helped her out a lot in that regard. And apparently they hung out a lot, too, like, doing puzzles and shit. She said that he was real funny. And, like, he made her laugh. Like, he had a really good sense of humor. Like, they had to act all serious in public and shit like that. But the thing about Queen Victoria, one of the things that I think was interesting to me about her was she liked people that were regular people. Like, she liked people that were, like, honest and funny and would, like, talk to her like she was a normal person. You know what I mean? Because I guess she didn't really have too much of that in her life. She didn't really like... It seemed like she didn't really like all of the ceremonial kind of shit where you had to look a certain way and be a certain way and, the public perception. I think she didn't really like that. So, like, when she met somebody that was just, like, cool or, like, was a drunk and, like, made jokes with her and, like, busted her chops and stuff like that, I think she liked that because it was somebody treating her like a regular person, which she'd never really had happen before. So I think that was kind of... her and Lord Melbourne, like, they would kind of, like, hang out and, like,
so how
joke
old was
together.
she at this point?
She's 18. Okay. She was 18 when
Melbourne's what, 40s?
I don't know how old he was.
Okay.
He was much older.
Okay.
He was much older. Like I said, he was like her dad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like she saw him as a dad because she didn't have a dad. You know,
Right.
her dad had died when she was a baby. So, and all she had was Conroy, and he was a douche. So there was that. So yeah. But she asked him for advice all the time, and he was actually, you know, really good at like, you know, helping her out with, you know, being queen because she didn't really know how to do it. You know. So basically the thing, so she gets, the coronation was in June of 1838. About 400,000 people came to London to see it. And she was actually the first sovereign to start living in Buckingham Palace. I believe the construction had only recently just been completed. So she was the first one to move in there, first one to live in there. Now, she actually got, I don't know if this is back in those days money or nowadays money, but her civil allowance, and this wasn't the only money she got because she also got money from like other like from Lancaster and Cornwall and stuff, but her civil allowance was £385 per year, and I think that's back then money, which that's a lot of fucking money.
Really?
That's a lot of fucking money. If that's, I mean, that's a lot of money now, but if that was like back then money,
£300?
no, 385,000 pounds.
Yeah,
385,000
yeah.
pounds per year. And I think that's in Victorian era money.
Oh, that's
which-
a shit ton.
That's a
millions.
shit ton of money
Tens of millions.
every year. I mean, but
Yeah.
that makes sense, though, because there was a
Yeah.
lot of shit that they maintained.
Yeah.
One of the first things she did, though, like when she first got her thing, so she wasn't like completely crazy. Like her dad had run up a bunch of debts and she paid them all off.
Right.
Like with her first. So I was like, oh, well, okay. At least she was like kind of prudent in that way. Now, interestingly, at the start of her reign for like the first year, she was actually really, really popular, which doesn't surprise me because she was like a cute little 18-year-old girl, you know, coming in there, little bitty thing, like I said. But about a year after she got crowned, there was some kind of like her popularity took a hit because there was some palace intrigue. Okay, what ended up happening was one of her mother's ladies in waiting, whose name was Lady Flora Hastings. She got this abdominal growth, and it looked like she was pregnant. So the rumors started going around that fucking Conroy, the douche, had knocked her up, and this was an out-of-wedlock pregnancy, which is a big fucking deal, right? Now, Victoria, because she fucking hated Conroy and did for like throughout her entire life, and she also hated Lady Flora Hastings because Lady Flora had been in on that whole like shit when they
sign on the thing.
had been in on that whole thing when she was being brought up, like,
Okay,
hey,
yeah.
she's not allowed to like see any other kids or anything, like the
Right.
Kensington method or whatever they called it. She was in on that, so she hated that bitch too. So she's basically like, oh yeah, I believe that shit. You know, fuck that bitch. So basically, Kensington system, that's what it was called. Now, so she kind of was out in the media saying, yeah, that's totally true. Now, Lady Flora, at first, she wouldn't like go to the doctor to like prove, she's like, I'm not pregnant. It's like, but she wouldn't go to the doctor to like prove it. But then she eventually did, and they did an examination and they found out that she was still a virgin.
Yeah.
Which-
so it's not possible.
So yeah, so she wasn't pregnant. And then, like, to add icing to the shit cake here, not only that, but they found out that the abdominal growth was actually a liver tumor that ended up killing her, like,
Damn.
not that long afterward. So obviously this whole debacle really kind of like Victoria kind of, because she had come out and said like, fuck those people, yeah, I believe that shit, and then she'd kind of like spread the rumor as well and said that she believed it. And so after that, like Conroy and like the whole Hastings family, like the woman's family, and also the Tories who were in opposition to her, they actually had this whole big campaign in the press against her for spreading like false rumors about her, and like, yeah, then she fucking died, don't you feel bad? So, you know, her popularity like took a big hit because of that. So she would like go out and do public appearances and stuff, and everybody would like fucking hiss at her and shit because of the stuff that she did. You know, that was a big thing in the Victorian era. Which I'd be like, okay. Yeah, okay. I don't understand why that was supposed to make me mad, but whatever. Lord Conroy, too, meanwhile, was still trying to pull some shit. he actually approached Lord Melbourne, the Prime Minister at the time, and he said, oh, hey, Victoria said that you were going to give me a pension of £3,000 a year, and plus you were going to give me some land and a title and like a seat in court and shit like that. And Melbourne said what?
Read what Zach said. He did the how much her yearly.
Yeah, in 1837 it's worth
48 billion.
48 million.
No, billion.
Is it? No, because that's $48,877,693
All right, $48 million.
dollars and 47 cents
All right.
or pence.
I don't have my glasses on. I thought it was 48 billion. Okay.
I did too for a second, but then
Yeah.
like I'm counting the numbers.
All
Yeah,
right.
48 million. Yeah,
It's basically 50 million.
48 million dollars. Is that all? 48 million a year.
She got 49 million a year.
Jesus Christ. You can maintain.
I take that.
You could.
Yeah.
Me too.
I take that,
You
yeah.
could maintain the fuck out of a lifestyle with that.
Maintain the motherfucking out of that. Only need one mansion. That's it.
Just the one.
Just one. Then I fly around and go to hotels.
See, that's what I would do too.
Go down to fucking Dubai and shit. Me and Jenny Dubai. Hanging out in Dubai, drinking. All them fucking high class call girls. Jenny tearing them up. I was like, me back there with the camera.
Tom's got
Putting
a
that
whole
shit
entire
on
fantasy life,
putting
yeah.
that shit on OnlyFans. Making more money. Have Jen and Dimitri come. We finally do our fucking family style porn.
Family stuff.
Yeah. It's like the KFC family.
I was just gonna say. I was thinking of Olive Garden, but same concept. It's family style.
Yeah.
Danny Rolling said, "Were there ever any assassination attempts on Queen Victoria?" Several. I believe there were 7 or 8 assassination attempts against her. We'll get into that. Yeah, there was a bunch. Some of them were kind of serious, but none of them even got close to succeeding. Like she wasn't even like wounded in any of them, really. Yeah, Zach said, and that's worth $54 million now. So $54 million a year. I think I could live on that. Maybe. I could probably live on that.
That's enough money a year to worry me. You can give me the 50 million once, and I'd like, okay, that's it, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't think I need it
forever.
every year.
Every year that.
I mean, I could live I could live several lifetimes on $50 million.
50 million a year, that might actually scare me. You know what I mean? Like I'd see that shit fucking piling up in there. Like,
I'm getting really nervous.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Well,
That's why they have private jets and shit.
That's what I mean, and it's like I can't really say because I've never had anything approaching that amount of money. But maybe it just gets to a point where you're just like so rich that you're just kind of like you just buy shit all the time that you're not even going to use. Because I don't know, I just kind of feel like why the fuck would you need a lot of that?
Here's
stuff?
something I found out recently. When you have that kind of money and you own those private jets, you don't ever go through customs. You don't even need those people.
Oh yeah, I know.
Those people don't even have passports.
Yeah. I know.
They can just fly to anywhere, and they land in
So
these
I get
little,
that. Like,
they land in these
makes
little
your life easier.
They land on these little private airports at their friends' places and shit, and little airfields, and they don't. They're above the law, like I said before. They're above the law and governments. That's all for us. But that's how it is.
The little people.
It's because we put up with it.
Bethina said I can't get my mind around that amount. I can't either. I can't imagine what it would be like to just like not worry about money because that's all I've done my whole
You could give
entire
me
life.
$1 million. I could live on that.
I could too.
Yeah.
Easily. Well, shit, I've lived on way less my whole entire life.
I'll just pay this house off.
Yeah, and then you'd still have a bunch
and
left
what was
over.
left over, I could scrimp on that, and then my fucking pension, I'd live good
Yeah.
on that.
Like I said, I'm not a real. I don't need a bunch of shit. I don't need a bunch of shit. I've gone past
Me
the
neither. I'm
point in
frugal.
my life where it's like I need to impress other people, and also like there's a bunch of stuff that I was like, why would I even spend money on that? Because I wouldn't use it. You know what I mean?
If I had that much money, my biggest fear would be to lose it. You know what I'm talking about? It would
Yeah.
almost be like a burden. I think you could get real used to that, and then you'd probably start worrying about losing that money.
Well, yeah, because if you've been poor your whole life, it
Yeah.
sucks. But I think there might be something a little bit more existentially worse about being poor, having a whole bunch of money, and then like getting used to that, and then losing it all,
right.
and then you're poor again. But you now with the knowledge
Of what it was like.
like
Yeah.
not like having a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So I can see how that would fuck you up big time.
Yeah.
But you can see like why it happens to a lot of like lottery winners and stuff like that. Like people that were always poor and they win a shit ton of money. Like they usually end up, not always, but a lot of them do kind of end up in a bad place. They either end up like losing all the money or they end up like really, really miserable.
Yeah.
And that's why, because they're not used to it. Like they either blow it because they're not used to having that kind of money, or, you know, and then after they lose it again, they're just kind of like, oh my God, like it's even worse than it was before, because before at least my life sucked, but I was used to it being sucky. And now
Didn't
it's
know
like,
any better.
And yeah, you didn't know any better.
That's
and
like
it's
my dad.
Right.
My dad doesn't know any better. As far as my dad's concerned, it's still 1990 as far as my dad's concerned.
Oh.
But it's 1990 from the viewpoint of fucking 1980. You know, you have to understand the South. But no, it's just fucking. It's funny. Yeah.
All right. Talk some more about the lottery. I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Hi, Bulk.
I talked to my dad a couple of days ago. I said, Dad, I'm gonna come down there and see you over the next couple of months. I got some shit I gotta do and all. Yeah, if I'm still here. He's convinced he's dying. So I'm asking him, you know, he's got to do chemo. He doesn't know if he really wants to do it. He's down to 130 pounds. Fuck. So he doesn't have much longer to go. But I said, look, man, if they're telling you to do the fucking chemo, just do the chemo. It might buy you some more time. He's getting super depressed, you know. But I think the last time I talked to him, I bucked him up some, you know. It's just fucking rough, you know. Fucking, we have a lot of friends here on the channel that I talk to off the channel that their dads died. You know, fucking, you know, I fucking went through it with fucking Khan down in Mexico when his dad died, you know, and I was like, yeah, my dad's doing bad too, you know. And you guys, some of you guys have been with me long enough to back when I had to go back to Mississippi for his fucking quadruple bypass, and I didn't think he was gonna make it then. So I'm amazed that he's lasted as long as he has, even though he's not that old. He's just in real bad shape. A lot of it had to do with fucking diabetes, you know, which is the bullet that I dodged. But if you ever got diabetes, and I think a lot of it had to do with the diet he was raised with, fucking hardcore, fucking old school Southern diet, that diabetes fucking ravaged him. He didn't have a fucking tooth in his head. Fucking cancer got him. But I have to do something. I don't want to fly down there though. I don't want to fly. I want to ride down there on my bike. I gotta get some saddlebags.
Yeah, it's not far.
It's not that far. It's only 8 hours. I can ride that easy. 8 to 10 hours. And when I get there, I want to have my own vehicle. I don't want to go through all this going to these fucking airports and then renting a car and paying all that money when fucking I could just fucking ride down there on my fucking Buell. And then have my bike when I got there. But when he goes, I got to go back to that house. I'll probably get his truck. All the other shit that he has, he's got a shit ton of guns. He's got a fucking gun safe, fucking super high-tech gun safe that has cameras in it with fucking a hard drive that records who stands in front of the damn fucking thing. It starts recording your face. He's got a lot of good shit, which I'd have to fucking pack that truck up and bring it here. But he's also got a lot of junk. And I don't want that house, even though I'm really not next in line for that house. His sister is. She doesn't want it. She's only a little bit younger than him, but it would go to his sister, and then it'd probably end up one of my cousins.
Well, I mean, that's the thing.
But it's not worth anything.
That's what I mean. It seems like, oh, neat, like I got left a house, but it just seems like it'd probably be more trouble.
It's way out in the middle of nowhere.
More trouble than it's worth.
Yeah.
Because even if it got left to you, you'd have to like just have it cleaned out. You'd have to sell it. You'd have to like, and it seemed like it would be too much.
Yeah.
Trouble.
You would think that I would be next in line, but it's not. He inherited that from his mom. So it went from his mom to his sister, not to him and his son. So that's just the order of succession. So it would go, if he dies, it goes to his sister, and then his sister will die right after that, and it'll go to probably my cousin Scott. But the thing is, the house it's not worth anything. The location, you know. Danny
Rowling said Airbnb, but it's like where it is.
No, there's nothing there.
Nobody would stay there as an Airbnb.
No, it's Heidelberg, Mississippi.
It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Heidelberg, Mississippi, population 600, 500 maybe.
Yeah, you're not getting
And
anybody going.
it was a
on
little
vacation.
German town, and my dad is the last white guy. He's got real good neighbors that take care of him. Clarice and her husband, who's a local National Guard fucking platoon sergeant. I've talked to him online, and I met Clarice. She came to see him in the hospital, and but he's the last white guy, and they take care of him. He's the Deep South is not what outsiders think it is, especially in some of these towns. You know what I mean? Black people and white people got along real well. They watched out for each other because it's country. It's not. They all know each other, and it's just part of Southern culture. And they check on him every day, feed him, give him turkey necks, and he watches their children. He'd take Clarice's son out fishing with him all the time. You know, when he was a little boy, and he raised 2 other black sons, really, fucking since I was gone, and they were the neighbors' kids. So he'd take them hunting and fishing, and they grew up and joined the army. Fucking gone. One of them went to jail. But it's just how it is, you know. And they just watching him before he checks out. But that's the cycle of life. That's the way it is with the Force, you know.
Yeah. Mark says these monarchs needed that kind of money to compete in the monarch game, though. If you could outspend your enemy, you win. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it just seems like so much fucking money, though. Zach said if I ever won the lottery, I'd put half of it away for whatever reason and use the other half to self-finance a movie. Yeah, see, like, something like that would be kind of cool. I would definitely save half of it, just, like, right off the jump, just in case. I would, like, stick it in an account that I couldn't get to. So I'd always, like, have it there. But then the rest of it I might, like, do some fun shit with. But, you know, it's never going to happen, so I don't know why I could dream about it. But, yeah. So, anyway. What were we talking about? Okay, so we were talking about Conroy being a douche and finagling Melbourne, who was then the prime minister, into giving him £3,000 a year and some land and shit like that, saying, hey, Victoria said it was okay. And he's like, oh, okay. And then she's like, motherfucker, I didn't say that was okay. So she, like, was like, get the fuck out of my face. Again. 1839. Melbourne... Lord Melbourne actually resigned after the Tories and the Radicals. Victoria didn't like either one of those groups. They actually voted against a bill they were going to suspend Jamaica's constitution over, the bill was actually removing power from the plantation owners because they were trying to get rid of slavery and the plantation owners were not having it. So they were trying to, like, do that kind of thing. So Melbourne quit over that. And Victoria was, like, really, really upset. Like, she wrote about it in her journals. Like I said, she's only, you know, she wasn't very old at this point, like, only, like, in her 20s or something. So she wrote about it in her journals like it was the end of the fucking world. Like, she was very, very drama queen about it. Because that was, like, her buddy, you know what I mean? And she didn't know what was going to happen now that he wasn't prime minister. So she actually got a guy who was a Tory, whose name was Robert Peel. And he became the next prime minister. Now, here was another kind of I don't know if it was necessarily a scandal, but another kind of, like, big debacle that happened at the time. So around in this era, I guess, like, the prime minister would come in, the new prime minister would come in, and they would actually appoint members of the royal household, like, you know, people that were friends of his, like his political allies, like in the same party as him, and like the wives of some of the other ministers and things like that. They would kind of put them in positions in the royal household, you know what I mean? Like as ladies in waiting or whatever the fuck. So there was that. So basically, when he came in, Victoria's ladies of the bedchamber, which I'm not quite sure what that entails. But it doesn't sound fun. It sounds like it sounds like Maid. It sounds like you're gonna be in there, like, you know, getting the queen into her corset and, like, emptying her bedpan and shit like that. That's what it sounds like to me. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what it sounds like. Now, when Robert Peel came in, though, most of the ladies of the bedchamber were the wives of Whigs, because that's the party that that Melbourne had been part of. So when Peel comes in, he just expected, as was the custom, that, you're going to be getting rid of all of your bedchamber ladies and replacing them with the wives of people from the Tory party, because that's just what we do. It's a different party now, and we're all working together. However, Victoria had actually made very good friends with her bedchamber ladies, and she put her foot down, and she was like, no, I'm not doing that. These are my friends. And like I said, I kind of feel like because of the way she grew up, I feel like when she made a friend, or somebody that she could really relate to and talk to, like she hung out of that person for dear life and was like really, really loyal to them. So I kind of feel like she really did like these ladies and hung out with them, and they were her close confidants and stuff. So she really balked at the idea of, getting rid of all of them and having like a bunch of strange ass motherfuckers like coming in there doing whatever ladies of the bedchamber do. So she was like, no, we're not doing that. So because of this, this actually became known for real as the bedchamber crisis. It was a bedchamber crisis because she was like, no, I don't want these random ass ladies in here. And Melbourne too, who, like I said, had resigned, being prime minister, he actually advised her, is like, yeah, tell that motherfucker, like, don't tell him, like, don't get rid of your friends, shit like that. This was such a big deal that Peel actually was like, well, I can't fucking work with this, and he quit, like, as prime minister. He was like, fuck this shit, and like was out of there just over that.
I missed it. Over what?
It's called the bedchamber crisis.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to repeat it for Tom because he wasn't here.
Oh, don't worry about it. I don't want to slow the show down.
I mean, yeah, no, it's okay. Interesting. It's interesting, okay. Actually. I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version.
All right.
So basically, Melbourne, who is a Whig, he resigned. They bring in a new prime minister who was a Tory. Now, what they had been doing up to this point was that the prime minister would basically like put members of his own party or their wives or something like that, like in positions in the royal household. So Victoria's ladies of the bedchamber were all Whigs. And when Peel came in, he's like, oh, well, you're going to be firing all those ladies and bringing in, Tory ladies because that's kind of what we do. And she said, no, I'm not doing that because these are all my friends. Right. And Peel was like, fuck this shit, I'm quitting.
Yeah, okay.
So and they called it like the bedchamber crisis, which I thought was very funny. I mean, like I said,
why did they care?
They were her friends. Well, that was just how it was done. Yeah. And I guess because it's like, well, that's the party in power because that's the prime minister's party. And so they expected to have all of these other party-friendly people like in the royal house, like working in there. You know what I mean? So they would all like work together or whatever. But Victoria wasn't.
They all influence her thinking.
Well, and like I said, Victoria, I don't even think she did it for any particular political reason. It was just that she liked these ladies because they'd been her.
Yeah, but the other political parties wanted to get influence.
Exactly, but she just didn't like it. You know what I mean? Because she was loyal to them. Because she.
Well, those other girls probably didn't give a shit about that stuff either.
She thought of them as her friends, and she didn't want to fuck them over. That was the impression that I got.
Okay, so she stood up for herself.
But Peel quit over that. And actually, Melbourne got to return to office for a little while. Now, Victoria, I mean, it should be noted, didn't really like Peel anyway, because he basically, like, treated her like she was stupid, just like Conroy had. And she did not like that one bit, because she'd grown up her whole life with Conroy telling her how stupid she was. So she didn't like dudes like that. So she didn't like him anyway. She was like, good riddance, whatever. Now, though Victoria was queen now, she was still young and she was still unmarried. And so because it was the social convention at the time, she still had to live with her mom. She did not get along with her mom because Mom and Conroy was still hanging out.
Right.
So basically her mom, like, she's like, okay, well, fine. Mom can live in Buckingham Palace, but she got to move way the fuck over there on the other side of the palace so I never have to see her fucking face.
Yeah.
So, and her mom would, like, try and come to see her, and she's like, no. So she wouldn't. I mean, she really did not like her mom. They kind of reconciled a little bit later, but, I mean, she didn't really forgive her, it seemed like.
Mom was vying for power.
For all the... Yeah, I do kind of feel like there was that, too. Now, so basically, Victoria goes to Melbourne, the prime minister, and is like, what the fuck is with this? She's like, I can't stand, like, being around my fucking mom all the time, and until, she just has to live in this house, and I don't like it. And Melbourne was like, if you get married, then, you could avoid this whole thing. And Victoria's like, oh yeah, that's right. Now at this point, like I said, she was only in her 20s, maybe. I think she was 20 years old around this time. So she hadn't wanted to like rush into marriage or anything like that, but they had already kind of sort of not unofficially, like her and Albert were gonna hook up. So she was like, okay, well maybe we should fast track that so I can kind of get rid of my mom because I can't stand having her around. So so Albert does another visit in 1839. So he comes there to visit, and he's only there for 5 days, and Victoria proposed to him. Now, that sounds weird, especially considering the conventions of the time, but it's actually not weird because she was a monarch and he wasn't. So it would have been inappropriate for him to propose to her because she outranked him, essentially. So she was the one that had to say, hey, let's get married. And he's like, okay, so they did. So they got married in 1840, like in February. And she basically, I mean, she wrote in her diary, like I said, she's only 20, so give her a break, you know what I mean? But she was like, man, she was like super gushing about the day after the wedding.
Well,
so
she'd probably never been laid.
So I'm assuming, yeah, that it was like kind of a sex thing. And she was, she basically writes, and this is just so teenage girl, it's so funny. She's like, I never spent such an evening. My dearest, dear Albert, his excessive love and affection gave me feelings of heavenly love and happiness I never could have hoped to have felt before. Yeah, she got laid for the first time.
That girl was fucking love stuff.
But yeah, it just kind of goes on like that. So yeah, the happiest day of my life, all this, like everything, the bliss beyond belief, stuff like that. So yeah, she got laid for the first time, and she was like super happy about it. But like I said, they really did seem to love each other. So I thought, and that was something that you didn't really see with a lot of royal families. So, that was nice for them, I guess. Now, so when they got married though, there was kind of like, I don't know if they necessarily meant this. I think the thing about Victoria is that there was a lot of like stuff, political stuff going on around her. I'm not really sure of how aware of the repercussions of what she did were. I don't want to like say that she was clueless, but I think that a lot of I think she just didn't care as much about convention as like some other people did, or care about like, oh, politically this expedient this was or that was. She was just like, well, I'm just going to do whatever the fuck and like not worry about it. I kind of got that impression from her. I could be totally wrong, but that's kind of how I read it. So when they got married, they didn't really invite that many Tories because, like I said, she wasn't really a big fan of them. That's what Peel had been. And basically, she came out and said, well, Albert should be just like second in command. You know what I mean? And the Tories were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not like recognizing his authority as second to yours. Like, and she got really mad about it. She called them monsters and said she was going to get revenge against them and shit like that. The weird thing about it, though, was that the longer she was married to Albert, like, he was actually really influential on her beliefs and like just the way she was, you know what I mean? She had been, friends with Melbourne for a long time, who was a Whig, and he was kind of like her father figure. But the longer she was married to Albert, like the less influence that Melbourne had on her. So I guess like Albert kind of like took over that role. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So she kind of like got less enthusiastic about the Whigs, whereas before she'd been all about it because Melbourne, that was like her best friend, you know what I mean? But Albert was definitely like the dominant figure in her life as time went on. And it got to a point too where some of the, like something that I saw, like one quote said that she didn't even put on a gown or a bonnet if he didn't approve it. So it got to a point where, and like some historians have thought that maybe he was like actually reigning it, like that she was only queen in name only. Like, I'm not saying that she didn't know what was going on. I think she did because she was like really intelligent. But a lot of historians say that maybe he was running shit, with just like behind her front or whatever. But I don't know if that's the case. But some historians have said that. So, so basically, because that's the thing. When they first got married, she was like, yeah, I don't want Albert to have anything to do with governing the country. But then, like, 6 months later, she was letting Albert see, like, all the updates and dispatches and stuff like that, like, all the business. And then he was allowed to be present, like when she was meeting with all the ministers and everything like that. And then he started getting all the keys. And the thing about it too was that she started getting pregnant, like, because they had 9 kids, right? So she was pregnant a lot, and she hated being pregnant, which, you know, I get that. She was not a big fan of pregnancy. She was not a big fan of breastfeeding. She was not a big fan of children. She thought babies were ugly and gross. And so she was, she suffered a lot, it seems like, from postpartum depression as well. Like, so she'd have a kid, and then, like, she'd be really bummed out about it, and then, like, she'd get pregnant again. So it seemed like she was always, like, convalescing. So Albert kind of had to, I think she just kind of, like, got worn out. You know what I mean? And she was just like, so she just like let Albert run some shit, because she's like, look, I'm fat and I'm hot and I have hemorrhoids or whatever. And she's like, I don't want to fucking deal with this shit right now. Which, like I said, I get it. You know what I mean? She really, really, really hated being pregnant. She called it, what did she call it? She called it like the shadow side of marriage, childbearing. She liked being married to Albert. She wasn't a big fan of marriage in general, but she really did love him. But she loved her kids, but man, she really did not like being pregnant or the whole child birthing thing. She just fucking hated it and was not shy about talking about it either. So I don't know. I just thought that was like really funny. So, I mean, when she first started out, I kind of feel like she was very gung-ho. Like, she's like, I'm going to be queen, and I'm going to help the country, and I'm going to run everything. But then, like, as time went on, and she just kept getting pregnant and kept having kids and stuff like that, and she was just like, man, I don't think I can fucking do this anymore because I'm fucking tired. And she even got to a point where she said she didn't think that women were fit for governing. Like, maybe from that idea, because she just was, like, fucking tired.
Brings up a good question.
What's that?
Right there. You read right there.
Where is it?
Towards the bottom.
I wonder if the king also has the gentleman of the bedchamber.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably. Yeah. I mean, I would like to look up, like, when they say ladies of the bedchamber, I was assuming that was like your maids, like your handmaids that would, like, help you get dressed, because back then they had
makeup.
Back then they had like 40 bajillion layers of clothing. Yeah,
the man of the bedchamber is the little skinny gay dude who comes and blows you to help release tension.
Probably
does that shit. He gets that, kneels down. You're sitting in a chair like that. You eat to the edge like that. He gets up and it's all gentlemanly and everything.
It's all gentlemanly.
Yeah, it's just. It's not a sexual thing. It's just it's maintenance. It's like getting an oil change. That would be fucking hilarious if they have it.
I mean, it very well may be something like that. I kind of assumed that. I mean, I kind of assumed that too, because I have a dirty mind. But I kind of assumed that, like I said, they'd come in and, like, empty your chamber pot and, like, you know, fill your water basin and, like, shit like that. Because there was a lot more stuff. They didn't have running water back then. They didn't have like, you know, so they'd come in and, like, fix your hair and, like, do your shit, like, get you dressed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I just assumed that that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's essentially like a maid job.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
It's like being a maid.
It's your friends that come in and take care of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having been like fucking.
Well, they're hanging out, you know what I mean? Doing girl stuff.
Doing girl stuff.
No, I totally imagine it. Talking about boys. Talking about dudes.
Talking about boys.
Yeah. Well, she grew up with them.
I know.
So it was going to be like that, and they were talking about dudes and fucking, you know. And
talking about the latest issue of Tiger Beat.
Yeah. Making sure, washing her feet.
Yeah.
Putting her fucking clothes on.
Well, I hope they are.
Doing her makeup and her hair and shit. Fucking doing, you know, doing braiding and hair and shit. Yeah, of course. That's what that was all about.
One of the things that always kind of killed me was, like, back then, man, there was, like, just so much that they had to, especially if you were in that kind of position where you actually had to look like, you know, you had to have all the full regalia, like, on all the time because you were, like, in the public eye. It's like, how fucking long did it take to get ready? I mean, even nowadays with all of our modern conveniences, it still takes women, like, at least an hour, like, to look halfway decent.
This Victorian era stuff is just a holdover from the medieval period. You know, that was going on in the medieval period. All these ladies, single ladies, if they were fucking nobility or royalty, they had a fucking gaggle of fucking girlfriends that did their hair and fucking did their nails and all their clothes. Because they have all these clothes, they didn't have washing machines.
Yeah.
She can't take care of all this shit. She needs a whole fucking...
Yeah, they got a whole staff.
Fucking pit crew.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they better be.
Yeah, pit crew. I
Yeah,
like that.
it's like the
Yeah,
pit crew.
it is like that.
It's exactly what it is. It's the pit crew, and they better be your friends. You know what I mean? So it was, and here's the thing: that was a high-ranking job.
Yeah.
That wasn't some bullshit.
Even though it sounds like it would be.
No.
Yeah.
Because the alternative is fucking working your ass in that damn field.
Yeah.
Working in the stables, mucking out fucking stalls, hooking, that kind of shit.
Yeah.
If you were a handmaiden, that was an executive position. You got to eat the same food that the fucking lady ate. You know, they all ate the same food. They lived in the same fucking facility.
Yeah, they got to live in a nice house.
Yeah, they lived
Probably
in a nice
like
house.
the shitty drafty rooms, but still.
Still a lot better
Yeah,
than
a lot
fucking
better
sleeping out with the fucking pigs.
Right, sleeping in the stable.
Sleeping in the stables and shit, because that's where that's kind of where they came from. But I think the thing is that most of those handmaidens didn't come from that. They were noble daughters. You were, in other words, if you came from a fucking wealthy family, you were positioning your daughters to get.
Yeah,
in
they
that.
did. Like I said, it was
You know.
it was whatever the prime minister, like whatever party
Yeah.
that was. It was always like other party
Yeah.
people or like the wives of some
Yeah.
of the politicians.
So,
that's the positions.
Your
they would give
handmaidens
them.
weren't slaves.
Right.
They were lower upper class, and their dads had to fucking weasel them into there. You know.
Zach says, first time getting laid at 20 and knowing the era, probably no masturbating. How did the orgasm not kill her?
You know, they were diddling. They were diddling.
I mean, as
They were
much
diddling.
as they said like that they weren't, it's like
They were.
I don't believe that. I don't
Yeah,
believe
I
that.
don't listen to them. Bashful bitches. They're bashful motherfuckers. They were.
I kind of feel like the Victorians are one of those kind of people that everybody talks about, like how strict and upright they were. They were probably like the biggest freaks ever.
Yeah, probably.
I kind of imagine. Because they wanted everybody to think they were all the picture of propriety and everything. I imagine they weren't.
Even fairly successful farming families, they all slept in the goddamn same room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the parents were continually having children. There's no way you could hide the fact that you were fucking in front of your kids.
Yeah.
They knew it was up.
I mean, that's what
Everybody
you did.
did.
Everybody
Yeah.
knew everybody's bodily functions at any
Yeah.
time. Like, you were watching everybody fucking,
Yeah.
you were watching everybody pooping,
Yeah.
you were watching everything.
Yeah, they weren't as
Bah.
it wasn't as prudish as people really think it was. They probably pretended to be prudish, but their version of being prudish was just some kind of ritualistic shit. The reality is that they were shitting out in public and fucking and you know in the same room with other people, and they were. It wasn't like you're thinking. It wasn't the 1950s.
I really didn't
Yeah.
think. I don't think they had anything like the modern conception of privacy,
No,
which is
privacy.
that's really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just interested in that kind of stuff. I don't think I could have lived back then because that would have been like.
There are still countries like that. Evidently, China has no concept of privacy.
I mean, like, if you're used to it, it's different.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like nowadays, everybody's kind of used to, you know,
Yeah.
having your own space. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you have sex away from you. don't want people like looking at you. And
Right.
I mean, you know, unless you're into that. Which
Yeah.
some people are.
Yeah, just because they're fucking and you see it, that doesn't mean it isn't improper.
Right.
So you're casting your own modern assumptions into these situations.
Well, they were, like I said, they were used to it, so it
Yeah.
wasn't weird to them.
You're right.
It wasn't weird
think
to
about
them.
it.
Like, it wasn't weird, maybe for the ladies of the bedchamber, it wasn't weird to see Victoria, like, popping a squat on the chamber pot.
Yeah.
That was just what you did.
Or masturbating.
Yeah,
There may
maybe
have
that
been
too.
They
Maybe
might
that
have
too.
helped her. You don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing.
You don't know.
And maybe that wasn't even weird.
Yeah, it was-
like, we're kind of like...
Like part of their duty.
Right.
Go ahead and do that.
Like, it sounds funny, but, like,
Yeah.
it's probably... They were probably like, yeah, that's just kind of
I
like
don't
part
know
of
if
your
it's
job.
true, but I'm just saying I could fucking rationalize it using Victorian methods. If you're doing it to yourself, that might be a sin. But if you have a servant doing it for you, it's just more normal and that's more proper because it's not sinful.
Right, I could... Yeah, I
They
can see,
might
I can
rationalize
see
it.
that workaround.
They
sure.
might rationalize
It's a loophole.
because it's not your responsibility. It's more like a medical procedure.
Yeah.
Which they did that.
They did, yeah.
They
well,
did
that's
that.
where the whole like
Yeah.
thing, because they had doctors come in and like
Right.
they didn't even call it masturbation. They didn't even like call
Right.
it anything like that.
Right.
But there's like what they call it, like relaxation.
Relaxation, tension,
stuff like that.
They're de-hysterifying them.
Right.
And weird shit like that.
They were jerking them off.
Jerking them off.
Yeah.
With a vibrator.
Yeah. It was a medical
Getting them with that
procedure.
damn Hitachi.
Yeah.
Okay.
The magic wand.
The magic wand.
The pocket rocket.
Yeah. So it probably stands to reason that goes way back into the 1800s.
Yeah.
So that may have been one of the responsibilities of these handmaids.
I kind of suspect that.
Is to do these medical procedures to keep fucking hysteria.
Yeah.
What they would
Keep
call
hysteria at
keep
bay.
hysteria at bay.
Got to maintain the sanity of the monarch.
Yeah, and they're just looking at it in a different way. They're still getting each other off, though.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably only one way, just her.
Yeah, I don't know. You never know.
And
Victoria
they got the other one petting her hair, and the other one fucking doing a thing. The other one's holding her hand, and they're talking to her. Said, "Okay, just let it out. Just let it out." You know they're doing that kind of shit, right? Okay, it's all over. You feel better. They're gonna rationalize it.
Like you said, maintenance. Just like the gentlemen of the bedchamber that come in and do
Maintenance, just blow you. Got his special "I'm gonna blow you" suit with this fucking special "I blow you" gloves on. Hair all trimmed.
I'm imagining. I imagined. I know this is a little bit past this era, but I was imagining somebody that looked like somebody from a barbershop quartet. Like,
that's not how
like
I
I
was
said, that
imagining.
was a little later.
I was imagining a gracile little fucking dude like Prince, like a little white, little white English Prince. You know what I mean? Fucking. And he's obviously gay, but you're not supposed to notice that. You know what I mean? And fucking, he comes in and fucking takes care of you. It's probably some shit like that. Just because they did shit like that. Come on.
Yeah.
They did things like that.
They did.
They just rationalized it in a different way.
Yeah. Like,
if you saw it today, you go, yeah, you had a fucking queen, you had a little gay dude come in and blow you, and you're calling it a medical procedure.
Yeah.
You know,
like, dude, just call it what it is. Seriously, it's okay. But like, but back then it wasn't okay. So you still did it, but you had to like call it something.
You had
else.
to call it something else.
You had to call it something else.
Yeah, I don't have proof that happened, but I'm just theorizing.
Allegedly.
It's alleged.
I like to imagine that's probably true. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Because people are not different.
The whole handmaiden thing, though, I'm guarantee you what our description was, that's probably what it was.
Yeah, I could see that.
And that probably goes way, way back.
Yeah.
Probably goes back to ancient Egypt. Rome, definitely. Definitely.
Well, and
Rome talked about it.
Well, the thing about it, too, is that you have to think, even up until this era, most of the time, I mean, Victoria and Albert were kind of an exception because they actually, like, really dug each other. But most royal marriages were of convenience. So, you know, they would fuck, like, to produce an heir. But I think a lot of time it was just, like, dutiful.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Duty. Yeah.
Like, you'd go in there, like, once a month or whatever and be like, yeah do the pumping thing. And you're just like, yeah, maybe we'll get pregnant this month. Bye. You know what I mean? I think I feel like it was more like that. So.
In the medieval period, most of the kingdoms that came out in like the Ostrogoths and Visigoths and all this, these little kingdoms that came out of the fucking collapsing Roman Empire, considered themselves to be fully Roman. And they did a lot of Roman stuff still for a long, long time. So it stands to reason that in the Victorian period, they're still doing things from the medieval period that came from Rome. So it would have been basically what we would call sex slavery or sex servicing. Probably still going on.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that be going on? They
Jeff-
had the money.
Jeffy Hart said, now I'm imagining Dame Judi Dench as Queen Victoria telling Conroy to get the fuck out of here using Jenny's dialogue. And now I'm also picturing that, so thank you very much. I love Judi Dench. But yeah, so that would be super funny. Maybe she did say that. I don't know. I don't think they said fuck back. Well, they did, but I don't know if they said it. I'm sure they said it in private. I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't. So yeah. So Victoria, you know, she's married now. She's pregnant all the time. She's kind of like miserable. And that may or may not have contributed to her finally kicking her fucking mom out of the palace. Because like she's like, bitch, I'm married now. Get the fuck out of here. She didn't like throw her out in the street. It's, you know what I mean? She actually went to, she got a house elsewhere in London. And then after Victoria's aunt died, who was Princess Augusta, then Victoria actually got both of her houses. So it's not like I said, she didn't like throw her out on the street or nothing like that. But she's just like, look, I don't want my mom in the house anymore. So she like I'm married now, I'll get the fuck out. So she also said, ooh, my phone's buzzing. I don't know who's calling me. It's probably like a salesperson. Now, in 1840, somebody asked earlier, like, how many assassination attempts there had been. There were several. I think there were 7, but there might have been more than that. So the first one happened in 1840. And this was not too long after she had first married Albert, and she was actually pregnant at this point. So this was like her first pregnancy. So she's in her carriage with Albert, and she's going to visit her mom, because Albert was actually trying to like get them to get along, which kind of worked out later on, but you know what I mean. So they're in the carriage, and a kid who was 18 years old named Edward Oxford like jumped out and shot at her like while she was in the carriage. Now he shot twice, but they don't know if he actually like just missed both times, like he's just a rotten shot, or if the gun didn't have any like shot in it. So he actually got caught, and he got tried for high treason, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity. They threw him in an insane asylum and then later sent him to Australia. So there's that. Now, one thing that this assassination attempt did was made Victoria very, very popular for a brief time, because, everybody, she had just gotten married and she was pregnant, and have this 18-year-old kid like jump out and shoot at her like while she's in the carriage. I mean, everybody kind of felt sympathetic toward her. So you know what I mean? But at this point too, this was like, she was still like unpopular because of the whole Hastings thing, like the thing about the woman with the abdominal growth, and also the whole bedchamber crisis thing. So this actually helped get her like popular again, the fact that she got shot at. So her first daughter, who was also named Victoria, was born in 1840. And as I mentioned before, the Queen absolutely hated being pregnant. Like, everything about it she just thought was disgusting and gross, and she just thought it was awful. And she was, like, depressed all the time. But I don't know, man. They didn't really have good birth control back then, and I guess her and Albert fucked a lot. So, because like I said, they had 9 kids, like, over their marriage. Yeah, I can't even imagine.
That's a quiverful family.
Yeah. And unlike a lot of families at the time, like, they all lived to adulthood. Now, some of them she did outlive several of them, but the ones that died, like, they died as adults. You know what I mean? Like, from various diseases. She didn't lose any as babies. So yeah, that's fucking crazy. I just can't imagine. And honestly, like, all of her kids eventually ended up marrying into other royal families in Europe. Interestingly, and she might have been, I don't know if she was like the ultimate source of this, but Victoria carried the hemophilia gene. And that ended up affecting 10 of her male descendants, including the son of the Russian Tsar, Nicholas II. So I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it had been around since then, but she was actually like responsible for like being the carrier for like a lot of the hemophilia that came out in the family later on, which is kind of interesting to me. But I mean, well, because
you got it in your family, huh? Don't you have it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
My grandfather had it, and well, my family is it. I don't know how unusual this is. I've heard that it's very unusual, because usually hemophilia, women are carriers and men like manifest it because of the way that it genetically like works. But in my family, my grandfather had it and passed it to several of my aunts. So 2 of my aunts, who are twins, have it like full blown. Actually, maybe 3 of them. 2 of the twins and 1 of the other sisters has it. And also, my cousin's son has it as well. So it runs in the family, and I've never been tested, but it's weird. I always thought hemophilia was like a one, like either you have it or you don't, but apparently it's like a percentage, because on my mother's side of the family, like a lot of them have like a certain percentage of hemophilia. So it's kind of like they have to be like one of my aunts they told her whole life, like, look, you have really bad hemophilia. She was even her and her twin were in like medical studies, because usually it doesn't manifest in women. Usually it only manifests in men. Like, women are just like the carriers of the gene, but they actually had it like full blown. And so they were like, they did all these medical studies on them when they were kids, and they told them, they're like, look, don't ever have children because you'll probably like bleed to death. You know what I mean? But one of them did, and she had all kind of problems. Like, they had to do like blood transfusions and everything like that. I mean, I've never been tested, and I've never had anything happen that would make me think that I had it enough that it would like fucking kill me.
My
you know
old
what I mean?
Hollywood friend from my military academy, fucking Brian Hackett's in the fucking chat room. Thank you for, he's saying my mustache looks good, my beard is good. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen your new movie yet.
Oh, we got a sex bot.
Sex bots.
Sex bots.
are in. Yeah,
Somebody's
yeah,
getting
yeah.
rid of them. Hey,
Yeah,
sex bots.
I haven't seen the Gina Carano flick yet, the Terror on the Prairie. Maybe you can send me a link to see it for free. I don't know, but I wanted to see it. Never got around to see it. We'll review it. It's behind that fucking paywall. They should have never done that.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Sabrina said, I think they did have a form of condoms back then. They did. I mean, condoms go back thousands of years, as far as I know. But he didn't tell her because they wanted her to have a lot of children. I think that's... I don't know. Like, I saw a couple documentaries about this, and one of the documentaries said that Albert's family, they specifically said, hey, get her pregnant and, like, have her pregnant and having kids all the time so she can't, like, run shit. So
Brian,
I don't know if that's true or not.
Brian said he had no idea you were 50. He thought you were 35. Yeah, no, she looks young. Took her to the club the other day. Was talking to a friend of mine. Fucking, you know, he went on HRT. He's feeling great. And I said, look at Jen, man. She's 50. He goes, I know. She looks amazing. And he's my age, isn't he? Maybe a little bit, maybe a year or two older.
I'm not sure. I don't know how old he is.
Yeah.
I've never asked.
Yeah, just stay in good shape and take shit. You know. Hormone replacement therapy. It works.
Plus, like I said, we've talked about it before. We stay out of the sun, and we don't do like old people shit.
Stay positive. Keep weight off.
Yeah, that helps.
Hormones will work. Most of it just testosterone. And occasional fucking touch-ups with anabolics. Yeah. It'll extend it a bit, you know. You're going to die eventually anyway. Just...
Well, yeah.
You want to die strong and pretty.
Yeah, Brian said, yeah, he was talking about seeing my my cable and how you grew up cast. Yeah, I posted a video earlier about the early days of cable TV and like how I ended up seeing Time After Time from like 1979. Yeah, I was around for all of that. So I was born in like 1972. So
me and Hackett went to SCMA, Southern California Military Academy. We were raised there. Signal Hill, California. It was the military academy. It was kind of out of the Sylvester Stallone movie Over the Top. Probably the inspiration for Evil Speak. Remember that fucking show? Remember that show, Brian? Evil Speak? We were in fucking school when that came out. We all wanted to see that shit.
Oh, that movie with what's that?
The possessed kid in the fucking military school.
What's his fucking name? God damn it.
Yeah. And we loved that school.
In a second.
We loved that school. It was a fun school. It was like being in the Boy Scouts and being in school at the same time. It was good. Yeah, it was cute. It was good. It was a good school. Loved it. And anyway, if there's any way you can get me a link to Terror on the Prairie so I can watch it, because I can't find it. I can't even rent it anywhere. We'll review it.
All right, so
And that other concrete one, what's it called?
Dragged Across Country.
Yeah, Dragged. He did that film also.
I mean, that's that you
it's
can.
supposed to be real well, and it's supposed to be a good.
Yeah, I've been wanting to see that for a while. Like you can,
we're gonna do
that's
that.
on regular streaming services,
Okay.
I think, as far as I know. I thought it was on Hulu or Amazon Prime, but maybe it might not be on there anymore. We gotta check. You gotta check. Did you have Z channel, Jenny? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, I know SCMA is gone. They fucking tore it down. Gone. The end of an era. It was there since the fucking what? The 20s?
Brian said he worked with the director of Evil Speak a few years ago.
Oh, did he? Yeah. I love that movie. We saw it. Didn't we review that?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we liked it.
Yeah,
Good
we did.
movie.
What a weird ass movie.
Weird movie.
What a weird ass movie.
Summoning the devil through a fucking Apple II computer. Wasn't it an Apple IIe?
I think it might have
Or was
been.
it just an Apple? Might
I
have
mean,
been
I
Apple
can't
I.
count the number of times that I accidentally summoned demons with
Yeah, it
my
was a good
Apple
flick.
IIe back in the day.
It's a good flick. I was watching it and I was
With
like,
the
man.
floppy disks and
I was like,
everything.
whoever fucking made this movie somehow knew about SCMA or fucking Army Naval Academy. It was kind of like that. But it was good. Good flick. How did he come up with that idea, Brian?
How does anyone come
Yeah.
up with any idea? So yeah, what were we talking about? Oh,
Okay, he said he's going to send a link in my messenger
Oh,
or
okay.
email. Okay, thank you very much.
Mrs.
All right.
Evans' Arty Party said, just got here, great topic. See, told you.
Yeah.
Tom, at the beginning of the show, you didn't see it, but Tom was like, this topic sounds really boring.
Yeah.
Like he said at the very
I said,
beginning.
sell me this topic.
And I was like, man, fuck off. Okay, so we were talking about hemophilia because we kind of got distracted. Because I said, yeah, hemophilia runs in my family as well.
Damn it.
You know, a lot of my aunts have it. So, 1842, Victoria and Albert actually went to Scotland for the first time, and they were really into it. They even got, like, they bought, like, all of this property there, and they built, well, okay, so they bought Balmoral, and then they also did, like, a neo-Gothic castle for the family there, and that is actually still there. Like, it's still a private residence for the royal family to this day. And Victoria would like go to Scotland, and she just went there all the time and like went to the Highland Games and all. She got all into the kind of shit. And her being there all the time actually did promote a lot of like tourism to the area. So, you know, I guess they did kind of like that. Now, interestingly, because Victoria and Albert went to Scotland and they had another property on the Isle of Wight, and you know, the fact that they went there all the time, it's almost kind of like, I feel like prior to this, like the monarchs had been more present in sort of like the center of things. But the fact that Victoria and Albert acted more like, I don't want to say a normal couple because they always had like a fuck ton of money, but the fact that they would go away to these other houses for like privacy to get out of the public eye and things like that, I think that made people like just regular people like relate to them more because they acted more like regular middle class people. You know what I'm saying? Like obviously they had like a fuck ton more money, but they were acting more like a middle class couple would act. It's like, oh, we're going to go here for privacy for a little while and stuff like that. Whereas like previous monarchs, I don't think had really worried about that so much. So I think that they kind of, I think that was one of the things that led to the royal family eventually becoming what it is today. I think this was kind of like the genesis of that, where they were starting to act more like regular people, you know, with fuck tons of money, rather than being like above everybody else. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of like that kind of situation.
Kind of like representatives of the, or figureheads of the people.
Right.
They're trying
But
to,
it's like the fact that they were like normal. It's like, hey, we got to get out of here for a little while and like go decompress, like at our house in Scotland, like bye. People could relate to that, I feel like. You know what I'm saying? Because they weren't just in the public eye all the time. So, I kind of, and also I think too, like Albert was real into like, science and things like that, like things that were going on at the time. But Victoria had very similar tastes to a lot of her subjects. Like she was really into like going to the circus, and she would go to like the wax museum, and she would read Charles Dickens and stuff like that, which was like something that regular people were doing. So I kind of feel like that people could relate to them in a way that they had not been able to relate to the royal family, like the monarchs before. So, like I said, I think that was like a big cultural change, which is one of the reasons why I said that she was so influential, just culturally. And I don't think she meant to be that. That was just like the way that she was. Also not really, like I said, not real religious, not real prudish, which I kind of feel like a lot of people think, attribute to a lot of people from the Victorian era. But her and Albert were like real into like, artwork of like nudes and stuff like that. I kind of feel like they were kind of secret freaks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so there was that. So here's another assassination attempt. 29th of May, 1842. Victoria is again riding in a carriage, and she's on the Mall in London. And then a guy named John Francis jumps out, aims a pistol at her, but the gun didn't fire. Man, guns back then were like fucking, I'm gonna kill you.
What year is this?
1842.
Yeah, it's cap and ball.
Yeah, that's why.
Unreliable.
Because the first attempt,
Yeah.
also 2 shots, and
Yeah.
he either missed or it didn't fire.
Cap and ball.
Now,
They had
so
quality control problems back then, and fucking moisture, and you couldn't keep anything loaded for very long. If it was loaded more than a couple days, you were risking misfire. You had to shoot the fucking gun every day.
yeah,
If you loaded it, you had to shoot it at the end of the day, and then reload it.
because it would get
Yeah, you couldn't stay loaded for fucking 2 or 3 days. You start risking misfires. Fucking that was the way old guns were.
yeah.
The chemistry wasn't there. They didn't have what they needed to make chemicals stable.
I mean, lucky for Victoria, because it seemed like a lot of people shot at her.
Yeah.
But none of the guns went off, or they missed wildly. So there's that.
That shit was probably hard to get in England even back in those days. So if the guy had a loaded gun, it stayed loaded for a fucking long period of time. Not like the West. You know what I mean? In the old West, fucking shit was easy to get, lot less controls. And then you could shoot. You could step out beside your house and fucking shoot off a fucking round every day to clear the fucking weapon out, and then reload. So yeah, they're in a more urban environment. So chances of misfire under those technological limitations far greater. So
Yeah.
it's not something like. It's not a plot point, you know what I mean? It's not like something out of a movie. That's the way it really was back then. Oh, somebody said.
Thank you, Bryce.
What do you
Thank you
say?
very much. The street I live on is named after Queen Victoria. I grew up learning a Haka. My tribe has that honors her. Okay.
What kind of tribe is that?
Yeah, I'm not really
Yeah,
sure.
you send us some more details on there. What kind of tribe that is? This
Mrs.
is,
Evans already party said with the
That's
court.
New Zealand dollars.
Yeah.
So he must be Maori. Must be Maori.
Yeah, maybe that.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay.
Mrs.
Mrs. Evans.
badasses up there. All the fucking badasses up there. Yeah.
Mrs. Evans' arty party said with the corsets they wore, the ball would have bounced off, probably. Boink! All the fucking 50 layers of clothes they had on. Seriously.
I served in the 101st Airborne Division
Yeah,
with Highland Boys.
Maori.
No Maori, though. It was all Samoans and Micronesians and Hawaiians. And Island Boys are fucking crazy. Y'all are cannibals. Fucking beating each other's asses and eating each other. Fucking... We had a Samoan in our platoon, and had a Samoan in our platoon when he was up in Korea, and a bunch of Micronesians, and fucking couldn't stand them Micronesians, and and fucking one of them was Gordon, who's a friend of mine, and he'd back there and he goes, "You have to understand something. These guys here, they taste great, fucking." Because they would eat Micronesians. Fucking funny shit, man. Cannibals.
These guys are delicious.
These guys are delicious. And they're like, "Oh man, fuck you."
Tastes just like a chocolate
Like
bonbon.
chicken. Yeah. That's how it was,
Not
man.
that I would know.
It's warrior culture shit, man. You're going to end up in an airborne unit. A ranger, Army Ranger.
So here's something that I thought was funny. So she's in her carriage. Some motherfucker pops out and, like, fires a gun at her, but it doesn't shoot. Now, the guy gets away. But the next day, Victoria tells the guy driving the carriage, let's go the same route, but we'll have more people with us and we'll go a little bit faster, because they wanted the guy to try and shoot at her again so they could catch him. She's like, yeah, we're gonna like kind of draw him out, and that actually worked. Like, the dumbass, jumped out again like the next day and shot at her also. And they actually caught him. Like, plainclothes policemen got him. And he also got convicted of high treason. Now, a couple days, he got a death sentence, but it got commuted to life. Now, 2 days after he got the death sentence, which I'm not really sure like how long later that was, another guy named John William Bean also tried shooting at the Queen. 'Cause, like I said, like everybody's shooting at her, and she seems like pretty chill about it. I mean, I don't know, but she was just kind of like, yep, they're shooting at me, whatever. Now, so this guy like fires a pistol at her, but apparently he didn't really have any real shot. I don't know. He put like tobacco and paper in there. I'm not really sure what he thought that was gonna do. Maybe it was just like a symbolic gesture or something. But yeah, it obviously didn't do jack, so she was just kind of like, all right, whatever. There was another one. There was actually another assassination attempt in 1849. And in that case, it was an Irish guy named William Hamilton. And he, again, fired a powder-filled pistol at her carriage as it went along Constitution Hill in London. But again, nothing happened. She didn't get hurt or nothing like that. Now, the only time she was ever injured, quote unquote, during an assassination attempt was in 1850. And she actually got, in that case, I don't even think she was in a carriage. But she was actually like this crazy dude. He was an ex-army guy, and his name was Robert Pate. And he just like came and started wailing on her, like jumped on her, like, and hit her in the head with a cane. But it didn't hurt her that bad. I think it just like bruised her head and like smushed her bonnet or something like that. You know, so nothing bad happened. The Irish guy that shot at her, he got 7 years. And I think Pate, the guy that hit her with the cane, also got 7 years. Like, they just kind of like sent them. Transportation. Does that mean they sent them to Australia, or I don't know. They didn't. None of them got death sentences though, which is crazy. Like shooting at a monarch, you'd think that that would be kind of like a bigger deal, but all right, like whatever. But none of them. Some of them got sent to Australia, but that's about it. But yeah, so she got shot at a bunch of times, but seems to have taken it with remarkable alacrity. She's just kind of like, yep, they're shooting at me. But she never got hurt, though. I guess because the gun sucked. She did get hit in the head with the cane, but that's about it.
Yeah, Bryce confirmed that he is Maori. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figure. Okay. Brian Hackett sent me a gift on my messenger. Okay, I'll check it in a bit, bro.
I probably need some more ice in that.
I'll get you some in a minute.
And then after that, if I still... I might have some more whiskey, but I want to finish that up first.
Oh.
If we have any of that whiskey left.
Oh, I got whiskey. So you just want ice in that and I'll give you whiskey later? Okay.
And then whiskey later. Whiskey later.
Okay.
So 1845. Probably most people, and particularly in the United States, you know this because we had a lot of Irish immigration right around this time because Ireland got the potato blight. Big old potato famine from Ireland, which, like I said, was the cause of a lot of Irish people moving to the United States because they were starving over there. Now, so over the next 4 years, from 1845 to 1849, over 1 million Irish people died, and another 1 million fucked off out of Ireland, and most of them came here to the United States. Now, Victoria got... I don't know if she necessarily got blamed for it, but she got associated with it. They called her the Famine Queen. Now, there was actually a rumor. I think this actually maybe started a little bit later. The rumor was, and I guess this started later after she was dead, like to kind of like shit on her a little bit. The story went that it's like, oh, she only gave 5 pounds of aid to the Irish, and then the same day gave 5 pounds to like a dog shelter. That is absolutely not true. That's a myth that happened like after she died. In real life, in 1847, she actually gave 2,000 pounds, which nowadays is about 178,000 pounds. Or actually, maybe it says equivalent to between 178,000 and 6.5 million pounds in 2016 money. So she gave that out of her own money to the British Relief Association, like to help out the Irish. So she did do some shit about it. I don't know if she necessarily... Like I said, the thing about Victoria is that she seemed to care to an extent. Like, she seemed to care about, like, individual people and their individual problems. But, like, when it came to stuff like, hey, the working class and their suffering or something like that, she really didn't seem to, like, see that. You know what I mean? Like, oh, whatever. But I think that was more like her privilege talking. I don't think she was a mean person. It's just... she didn't really know any different.
Hey, Bryce. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when the Maori served, they end up in the British Army, I think. I think they're a British Empire, British Protectorate. Because we never had any Maori in the Army, in the U.S. Army. Now, when I was in Egypt, we served with the Fijians, but they were also British Empire. And this is when we were on the MFO mission over in Egypt. And the Fijians, I don't know how close Fiji is to New Zealand, But fucking the Fijians were madmen. Fucking big too. Big and fucking crazy. They were good though. Real good. But that's all I'm gonna say about it. We didn't have any Maori. And it must be British Army. Gotta be.
Yeah, Bryce said yes we did. Still to this day we're British Empire.
British, yeah. British Empire, right. Same with Fiji. Yeah. Probably like Fiji, maybe. Similar probably.
Mrs. Evans' Arty Party said that's when my Irish family came to the U.S. like during the potato famine. I'm genetically obsessed with eating potatoes because of that famine. I think probably that's when my, at least the Irish side of my ancestors came over as well. I think anybody that has any Irish ancestry, I think the majority of it came over after the potato famine. During the potato famine, right? Like during those 4 or 5 years in there.
There was a bunch of times that they came.
That's true, but I do kind of feel like
there was a 1920s fucking flood also that came. We're Southerners. We're just kind of a mix of a bunch of different things that came over time, and there's going to be when you try to trace ancestry, you can't go through the paternal lineage because you're neglecting all the other fucking lineage because of all the females and everything also, and you're not related to one single person. Of course, you're related to a damn group. So, and then you go back 4 or 5 generations and you're barely related to these people anyway. So you're just kind of a fucking genetic mass, like a swarm, you know. If you're Southern and you're white, it's a lot of Irish, some British, Scottish, some German, and probably like something Hispanic, because the Spanish Empire and the French Empire were here too. So you're going to have that in there also. And then Native American. And probably black, depending on how long you've been here. A lot of people have some black ancestry, even if it's not visible. You just have to go back far enough.
Yeah, my family does for sure.
Mm.
But
yeah.
Mrs. Evans' Arty Party said, I was dying laughing when y'all were talking about being famine resistant. Yep, I'm half Choctaw Indian and half Irish. We do not starve.
You're going to be fat, short, and fucking fat. Yeah, you remember that far back. That's fucking funny, yeah.
That is very funny.
Short and fat. Eat anything and keep weight on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sucks, man. I'm telling you
It's your
right now.
hormonal disposition. I've been fucking regulating my own hormones manually. It takes a lot, even fucking artificially, to fucking get fat off you when you have our genes. Anti-starvation genes.
I'm just very, very jealous of people because I've known people in my life that were just thin and they ate what they wanted. They didn't even really exercise all that much, but they just like constantly stayed thin.
I looked at that though. A lot of times what happens is they could be directly related to you and have fucking anti-starvation genes, but they have a gene in there that fucking allows them to produce a lot of insulin. So they're very fucking resistant to carbohydrates. They can fucking break them down a lot easier.
It must be that.
And yeah, and it's just the fact that they have a good insulin gene. And you know what race of people has excellent insulin genes? Japanese. The Japanese and the Koreans. That's why they don't really get that fat. They can eat a lot and then eat a lot of carbs like rice and not gain a lot of fat. Good genes for it. Insulin production.
Like I said, I'm jealous.
Strong insulin.
Because I've seen some people that eat twice or 3 times what I can eat in a day and don't gain a pound. It's like, man, if I ate that, I would weigh 500 fucking pounds.
They eat a whole bag of damn candy corn and not fucking gain any weight.
Right. And I'm like, oh my God, I hate you.
They could just make all kinds of insulin and just break that sugar down.
Yeah, Danny Rowling said, cough, cough, sumo wrestlers. Well, yeah, but, I mean, the reason that sumo wrestlers are, like, celebrities because they're unusual.
They're unusual. And they're not just eating just rice. They're eating high protein, too. They eat a lot. If you see what sumo eat on a daily basis, they're fucking... You have to force yourself to eat that much. You couldn't just eat that. Look at what they eat a day.
I mean, yeah.
You couldn't eat that. That's a fucking lot that they eat a day.
I'm sure I couldn't even eat a fraction of that.
Right. It's a lot of fish. It's a lot of fucking Japanese food. A lot of rice. They drink a lot of sake. So no, that's very high calorie. If you were to eat that, you'd probably be fucking twice that size.
I'm sure. But yeah, okay, so what was I saying? So we were talking about the Irish. So she actually did give a lot of money to that, although it's questionable, like, how much she actually gave that much of a shit about it. She did have a house on Balmoral, and she did seem to hang out with, like, the Scottish poor in that area. And her and Albert also supported the repeal of the Corn Laws, which was kind of a big thing, and that was like this... It was this legislation that kept the price of British grain like artificially high, and they actually supported repealing that because that would help out Ireland, which obviously had been devastated by famine. But they didn't seem... I mean, they just did that because it seemed like politically expedient. I feel like they were a lot more interested in building their house, like on the Isle of Wight, and like doing more like with foreign policy. They cared about Ireland, but I think it wasn't like their main priority. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And another thing too was that there was a group called the Chartists who were reformists, essentially. They were kind of more working more toward like a democratic, like more working class type of thing, like more rights for the working class. And Victoria did not like them. You know what I mean? She was like really she fully supported like repressing them, and they did a big demonstration in London, and like it failed, and she was like all about that. You know what I mean? And she called them worthless and wanton. That's what she called them. And basically she was like anything that had to do with like revolutionary, anything that was like making conditions better for the workers, she thought that was like not a good thing. Because she was always like, one of her quotes, she said, "Obedience to the laws and to the sovereign is obedience to a higher power, divinely instituted for the good of the people, not the sovereign who has equally duties and obligations." So like I said, we were talking about this earlier, she was very much still like a divine right of kings motherfucker. You know what I mean? She didn't really like this whole rights for the working class type of shit. It's like we're divinely put here to like rule over you people.
God said so.
Because God said so.
Yeah.
So quit causing agitation because you're just making things worse.
Let me get back, Brian. No, yeah. If we can watch Terror on the Prairie, we'll review it. I've been wanting to see that. And Bryce, yeah, talking about the Fijians. We were impressed with the Fijians, man. They were badass. Big. The British banned them from drinking alcohol, even when they were off duty, because they would kill you. They were just mean when they were drunk. And I got stories about that. Fucking Fijian colonel got drunk and fucking busted his way into a bar, already drunk, and the British had to kick him out, and it took like 6 guys. And you're saying they're fucking even more badass than the Maori. I'm fucking, yeah. Well, that's impressive to hear that, because I thought the Maori were badass too. Everything I've seen about them, but they're just big, the Rock motherfuckers, And the Fijians were like that too. They were kind of darker skinned, big, loyal, real professional, dangerous. Especially if they got their hands on alcohol. No resistance to alcohol at all. Kind of the same as a Samoan. Samoans, if they got drunk, he'd be your best friend. He'd turn on you and try to kill you. And they got banned from drinking, and a lot of the units that they were in. It's just genetics. I totally understand. If you fuck around with any kind of drugs or hormones, there's some things that just don't work on certain people. And yeah, Islanders will get mean on that. They didn't evolve with it. Okay, go ahead.
So one of the big highlights of the reign of Victoria and Albert, too, it must be said, was 1851, opening of the Great Exhibition. This was kind of like a big deal. Like I said, kind of highlight of their regime. Albert actually like organized this big international trade show, and this was kind of like symbolic of like the, here's the like the progress, or how the progress we've made like with the Victorian age. It was like the Crystal Palace. They did that whole that greenhouse building that was in Hyde Park, and it had all of the kind of like, it's kind of like the World's Fair would be in the United States, where there's like, here's all the technological achievements that we've made, and it's like, here's all the progress that we're making and shit like that. And it was like a big, huge fucking deal. Victoria was like super into all the stuff that Albert came up with organizing it and everything like that. Now, the profits that they made from the Great Exhibition, actually, the money they got from that funded what would become the South Kensington complex of colleges and museums, and that included the museum that would become the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is still there today, and, you know, so it's kind of a famous museum. Now, interestingly, though, right about the time that the Crimean War started, about 1854, Victoria and Albert experienced some waning popularity around that time. There were rumors going around, possibly unfounded, I'm not entirely sure, that Albert was trying to influence the government in favor of the Russians. But as the war went on, it lasted about 2 years. There was actually, so even though they were unpopular at the start, like as the war started going on, like I guess royalist sentiment sort of like, you know, started going back up again. And I think maybe some of that was because Victoria tried to kind of put herself out there, and she had all these ladies, and they kind of got together and like helped out the wounded soldiers, and you know, backed Florence Nightingale, and she instituted the Victoria Cross, you know, like for gallantry, which I think they still give nowadays. So she tried to like kind of up the, you know, their public perception by going and helping out all the wounded soldiers and everything like that. She also kind of did stuff like becoming patrons of institutions, doing all this charity work. You know, they put like money into like educational museums and stuff like that, and they do like visits to industrial towns and stuff like that, which I kind of feel like a lot of monarchs hadn't done previously. They were trying to make themselves, I guess, seem more relevant because they were afraid, because at this point in Britain there was a tide toward more like democratic or more kind of like a more constitutional republican type of thing rather than a monarchy, and they were trying to make themselves seem more relevant, or like, hey, we're working and we're earning our keep, you know what I mean? You guys are giving us all this money and we're giving it to charities, and we're doing things in exchange for the money that we're getting rather than just laying around. Because prior to this, I kind of feel like the reason that the monarchy that they were looking at it, that the public was looking at as scants, was that they felt like, oh, there'd been all these like sex scandals and financial scandals, and it's like, it seemed like, you know, you're taking all of our money and you're just laying around being indolent and like, you know, knocking up prostitutes and like whatever the fuck they were doing. And they're like, what are we paying you people for? You know what I mean? So they wanted to seem, I think Victoria and Albert wanted to seem more useful, you know, like they weren't just like laying around spending everyone's money or just being like degenerate, you know what I mean? Like we're actually doing something that's for the good of the country. So like I said, I kind of feel like they were the first royals that actually did that, and you know, that kind of like continued into the present day. In March of 1861, Victoria's mother died. Now, Victoria and her mother, like I said, had a very contentious relationship. They had kind of reconciled somewhat. Like, by the time she died, Victoria was actually there at her bedside when she passed away. After she died, Victoria started reading through her mom's papers and discovered that privately, I guess she'd never told her this to her face, but Victoria's mom apparently like really, really loved her, but had never told her this, I guess. So Victoria felt really bad, and then hated Conroy, that douche, even more, because she started feeling, well, maybe Conroy was the one that had come between them. Like Conroy had influenced her mother and like made her be a bitch or an asshole just like he was, and robbed them of the relationship that they might have had otherwise. Now, because she got really, really upset, like that after her mother died, and she's like, oh, well, we're never gonna repair the relationship now. she kind of like took, I don't know if she necessarily took to her bed, but she was just kind of like didn't really want to do anything because she was like so bummed out. So Albert actually ended up taking on most of her, queenly duties or whatever, even though he was actually kind of like suffering from some ill health himself. He had like a lot of chronic stomach problems. Now, in August of that year, this was 1861, Victoria and Albert went to visit their son, who was Albert Edward, who was the Prince of Wales. They actually called him Bertie, not Bertie like, bye-bye Bertie, but Bertie like Bertie. Now, he was actually doing some army maneuvers near Dublin. Now, while they were there visiting him, they found out, like Albert found out, that apparently his son, Bertie, had been fucking an actress in Ireland. And everybody was talking about it. So, like, the rumor was getting around. So, basically, the dad was like, oh, okay, fuck this kid. So, he goes to Cambridge, where he was studying, and confronted him about it. So, on this trip, though, Albert got even sicker. And then he got diagnosed with typhoid fever, and he ended up dying in December of 1861. Now, obviously, because Victoria and Albert had been so close and had been so much in love with one another, Victoria was absolutely, like, fucking grief-stricken when he died. And she also, it should be said, kind of blamed her son for killing her husband. Because it's like, if he hadn't been so worried about you and fucking that actress and had to come out there and yell at you and shit like that, like, he might still be alive kind of situation. So there was that. I don't know if she ever forgave Bertie, but she did actually, like, blame him a little bit for killing her husband. Now, when he died, that was the end of what they called the Albertine monarchy. Now, I mean, his influence on her persisted, actually. He had kind of, like, changed... I don't know if he changed her entire personality, but he changed a lot of her political sympathies, and, she really kind of... I don't know, he influenced, like, pretty much everything that she did, like, going forward. So now that he was gone, she was just kind of, like, at a little bit of a loss. And after he died, she sank into, like, this horrible, horrible depression. Now, she went into seclusion pretty much. After a while, they started calling her the Widow of Windsor. So she went into a state of mourning very famously, wore black for the remainder of her life, which was a long time. And I mentioned this before, but because she wouldn't come out and about, she would just kind of like sit around and be bummed out, and she ate all the time. So she got like pretty fat. You know what I mean? As you can see from later paintings and photographs. And she wasn't big. She was only 4'11", so she was a little bitty rotund girl. And then the fatter she got, like the less she wanted to go out in public. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like a vicious cycle. And also, this is kind of weird. I don't know, it's not weird, it's just kind of, it's sad. But every night, where they lived, she would have them lay out Albert's clothes on the bed as though he was going to get up the next day and put them on. And then every morning, like, the people would come in and, like, put fresh water in the basin like he was going to use it. And she also had a photograph of him, which this is fucked up. Like, it's not weird, like, sleeping in a room with, like, a photograph of, like, your dead spouse. That's not weird. But what was weird was that the photograph of him that she had in her bedroom that she slept next to, like, for the rest of her life, was of him dead. Like, it was head and shoulders of him, like, that had been taken after he died. The Victorians, man, they were a little bit weird. Well,
in their defense, photography was rare and expensive.
It was, yeah. And I know that's kind of why people say it's like, oh, why'd they take pictures of dead babies and shit like that. But that's why.
Yeah, it was rare and expensive, and you were lucky to get a photograph every 3 or 4 years. If somebody died, they're like, look, we got to take a picture of them before.
Because it's the last time we're ever going to see them.
We're never going to see them again. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Same thing with the babies.
Yeah.
It's sad when you think about it.
Yeah. Like I said, if you don't really think about the context, yeah, it's super weird and creepy. Like, why would you take a picture of a dead baby? And, like, the weirdest ones, too, is that sometimes they have pictures where sometimes the babies are alive, but sometimes they're dead, too. But they don't want the mom in the picture, so the mom just, like, wears this black cloth over her, but you can still tell there's a person there. It's like just holding the baby, like on them. Like, that's so creepy.
It's just sad. They're just trying to hold on to a person that's gone.
Yeah.
They're trying to get a picture of it.
It's not creepy when you read about like what the context was, but if you don't know the context, it's super creepy. Like, what the fuck
some
were they
mom
thinking?
wants to see what the little babies would look like. It kind of make you choke up if you think about it too much.
Yeah, it is very, very sad. It is very sad. Because like I said, photography it's not like now where you can take 500 pictures on your phone. Yeah. It's like back then, it was a big deal, and it's like you had a baby, and then like a couple days later they died, and you're like, well, shit, we need a picture to remember the baby by, because so that's why they did it. But so
nowadays they wouldn't be so sentimental. They'd be, fuck that baby, we'll have another one. But back then,
I think people would still be sentimental nowadays.
They would.
Babies are still babies.
They wouldn't be taking pictures of it, but back then they were trying to freeze that moment in time and trying to memorialize that person. Yeah. So it was respect.
Yeah. Rebecca said maybe she needed the photo to remind her that he was dead when her grief used to mentally mess with her, where she may have daydreamed of him still living. Maybe that's what it was. But it's like, it seemed strange that she would have his clothes laid out every day as though he was still alive, but then sleep next to a picture of him dead. I don't know. I just thought that was like a little bit strange. But like I said, whatever. I'd said I'm not inside of her head, and it's like really sad for her and stuff. But yeah, so she had a hard time getting over his death. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that she's actually most famous for, was this long period of mourning that she went through. Now, she did actually get out of her depression, but she was still kind of like partially retired. She really didn't have the enthusiasm anymore for doing any of the kind of like ceremonial functions that you were supposed to do, like if you were queen. And pretty much like almost half the year, I don't know if it was half the year, but maybe like a third of the year, she would go to like their house on the Isle of Wight or their house in Scotland, and she would just kind of hole up there because she just didn't want to deal with it. And I kind of feel like a lot of the ministers and stuff like that were getting annoyed with it, because they're like, look, you're still kind of like the monarch, and you're still kind of like a head of state, and we'd like to be able to like consult you about things, but you're never around. They gave her some time, like obviously for grieving, but after a while they started to kind of get tired of it, and like the public started to get tired of it too, because they're like, look, our tax dollars are paying for you, and you're just kind of like mooning around at your house in Scotland and like not doing anything. So I kind of feel like that maybe contributed to the burgeoning feeling that maybe, in the public, that they didn't really need the monarchy. I mean, I think even around this time period, like one like hilarious person even hung a for rent sign on the gates of Buckingham Palace, which I thought was very funny, because they're like, look, we're paying your salary, and like you're not even here most of the time. Like, why do we even need you? Now, throughout the 1860s, like I said, she's a widow now. Victoria started relying more heavily on a manservant from Scotland. I think she had known him previously, because I think he worked for her husband to some degree. But he was a Scottish fella named John Brown. Now, rumors of a romantic relationship, which I think are probably pretty founded. I don't know if I want to say that like outright, but it does seem that that's what was going on. There were even rumors, and a couple books came out like after she died, that they had secretly married, like without telling anybody. And even at the time, some newspapers and stuff like that called her Mrs. Brown, like as like to kind of like get her goat, you know what I mean? Because there was the rumors that she had secretly married him because he was a commoner. Now, she actually wrote about him a lot in her journals. I think one of the things, and I think I brought this up before, one of the things she liked the best about him is that he treated her like a regular person. Like, he would like take the piss out of her. Like, what the fuck? And he was like drunk all the time too. Like, he seemed like a fun dude. You know what I mean? He just, from what I read about him, like he seemed like a fun guy. And I think she liked him because of that, because he just was like a regular drunk Scottish dude and would just like fuck with her all the time, and she just thought that was funny because nobody treated her like a regular person. Yeah. And maybe they were fucking too. I imagine they probably were.
What was the age difference?
I don't know. I don't think there was that big of an age difference. I think, like I said, he had worked for her husband, like as a manservant, but I don't think there was that much difference. I think they were around the same age. Maybe he was slightly younger, but I'm not really sure. Not
yeah,
really
she
sure.
might have been getting some.
Yeah, I kind of feel like probably, and
It's free,
like,
yeah,
and
it's
rightly
free,
so. I mean, yeah, she was a little tubby at that time, but that's okay.
Not like you had to pay anything.
You know,
It's free.
they liked each other.
Yeah.
They liked each other. So it's you know, and
Nobody's-
she was a widow. She wasn't
Nobody's
married.
gonna tell them they can't do it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like there's no shame. No shame. So finally, in 1866, Victoria goes to the state opening of the Parliament. This is the first time that she's been there since Albert died. Now, the following year, like after that, in 1867, she actually supported the passing of what they called the Reform Act of 1867, which actually extended the, I guess, like the vote or, you know, whatever to a bunch more men that had been able to vote previously. But interestingly, she still didn't think women should be allowed to vote in 1867. Isn't that fascinating? Even though she, like, ran the shit, she was like, nah, I don't think women should vote. Figures. So by 1870, again, like, there was more of a push toward less of a monarchy kind of thing and more of like a republican or more like a democracy type of thing. And there was a big rally in Trafalgar Square that year that actually demanded that Victoria be removed because they thought that they didn't need a monarchy anymore. So that obviously didn't go anywhere because she did stay in power. But like I said, there was just like that sentiment was in the air, like we don't need the monarchy. They wanted to go like in a more democratic direction. The year after that, her son, Bertie, the one that had fucked around with the actress and that she blamed for killing her husband, he was the Prince of Wales. Now, he got typhoid, which was the same thing that had killed his dad. Now, Victoria, at this point, I think she kind of like forgave him at this point. She's like, oh my God, he could die of the same shit that his dad died of, but he actually recovered. Now, his illness, though, actually kind of turned public sentiment like back toward, like, she got more sympathy for that because, you know, they were afraid, oh my God, like, her son's gonna die too. Like, she'd had a lot of death in her life, and I think they kind of felt bad for her. 1872, there was yet another assassination attempt while she's riding in her carriage. Yeah, man, bitch can't go anywhere. She can't go anywhere. She's riding around her carriage and people jumping out and shoot at her. But this time, John Brown, her Scottish little boyfriend, was with her, and he actually jumped out the carriage like a hero and grabbed the assassin. And so this actually gained her a lot more sympathy with the public because, again, somebody was like fucking shooting at her. So 1847, a new prime minister comes in, Benjamin Disraeli, which I kind of feel like if you know anything about British history, you've heard that name before. Now, he wasn't real into like the monarchy, like having a lot of power, but he did see that the monarchy could be seen as like a symbol of patriotism and like just a symbol of the empire as it expanded, because he was very into like expanding the empire, right? And so he like went hard like on being very charming to Victoria, like kissing her ass. One of his quotes, I don't know if this is a direct quote or if this is like kind of like a paraphrase, but one of the things that he said was, everyone likes flattery, but when it comes to royalty, you should lay it on with a trowel. That's what he said. So apparently that worked. And he actually got Victoria back into like largely into the public eye once again by having her crowned Empress of India in 1876, even though she never fucking went there. I think they did ask her to go, but she sent her son in her place. So she actually was Empress of India, but she never went there. So, like I said, Benjamin Disraeli, very, very into expanding the British Empire, and that led to a couple of little wars there, as it will. You had the Anglo-Zulu War, which happened in 1879, and the Second Anglo-Afghan War, which was from 1878 to 1880. Now, Victoria, as I said, was very much a product of her time. She kind of saw these other countries as backward, and we need to civilize them. She was very kind of, you know, very, very imperialist in that way.
Well, in her defense, in those days, those countries didn't have a support infrastructure. So they would think that, well, because they don't have sewage and running water, they can't be, you know, like us. They can't be civilized yet. So that's what she's talking about, most likely. I mean, they didn't even have...
it's something like that.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never...
You have to develop them.
She doesn't seem like a mean person.
No.
She didn't seem like a, you know...
I'll talk shit. Being American, I gotta talk shit about the British. But I do that. All right. That doesn't mean I don't like the British Empire overall. Actually, did a lot of good for the world. There's always going to be some abuses and fucking problems, but if you look at the countries today that once were part of the British Empire who now are independent, they're doing good, especially India, doing real good, okay? And a lot of that had to do with kind of like the foundation of education and running water and electricity and everything that the British Empire was able to provide. They were developing countries. The British Empire was a part of a lot of countries' developments. Even in the United States, we got rid of them. They were overall fair to us. It's just that we kind of outgrew them. Didn't want them here. A lot of it was social. They didn't respect our leaders in their parliament. We didn't like that, you know. They saw us as a colony, colonists, not true citizens. But that's another thing, is that the concept of citizen is a Roman thing, and we revived that in the 1700s, early 1800s. America did. They didn't really have the concept of citizenship in these monarchies. It was, there's the monarch and everybody else underneath them. That's really what it was. They didn't really have citizenship per se, because traditionally in a monarchy the citizens didn't vote. They weren't citizens, they were peasants. You know, so you didn't have to worry about elections. That's all a Greco-Roman concept. So, but overall the British Empire was, I think, a force of good when it came to spreading education and technology.
Mrs. Evans' arty party said they weren't civilized because they didn't have tea parties.
They didn't have tea parties. Yeah.
And then Tammy said, if you had a flag, you could take over another country. That's another Eddie Izzard reference. Do you have a flag? No, we don't have a bloody flag.
Yeah.
We live here.
Yeah.
No flag, no country. Those are the rules. But
yeah, I fuck with them. But the British were good. It was all part of the process of the world. In their day, they were real good. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that was kind of where she was coming from. Now, interestingly, like I said, she did have a lot of tragedy in her life. On the 17th anniversary of her husband Albert dying, her second daughter Alice also died of diphtheria. She was actually 35 years old. So like I said, all her kids survived to adulthoods, but a lot of them died fairly young. Like, she outlived a lot of them. In 1883, Victoria, who was then 64 years old, fell down the stairs, and that left her unable to walk for several months, and she never actually fully recovered from this injury and had rheumatism for the rest of her life. Now, for a while, for like a week and a half, John Brown, her little Scottish boyfriend, carried her around, which must have been quite a feat, because I think she was pretty chubby at this point. But he actually died only 10 days after this accident. So, of course, she was obviously really distraught about that. Again, she actually had a statue of him made and put it up at Balmoral, like in Scotland, like right next to the one to Albert. You know what I mean? So they were fucking. I'm pretty sure they were fucking. Victoria also had another son named Leopold, and he died when he was 30. He had hemophilia. Again, she passed it to many of her male relatives, and he actually had a cerebral hemorrhage after he fell. That was in 1887. Now, that same year, 1887, the Empire celebrated Victoria's Golden Jubilee. That was her 50th anniversary as queen. So she got like this big banquet and like this big thing at like Westminster Abbey. And when that happened, again, she had another surge in like popularity, and there was like a big thing of like British patriotism and shit like that around that time too. Now, 2 days later, I think Zach referred to this earlier. 2 days after the Jubilee celebration, Victoria promoted an Indian Muslim waiter. They call him a waiter or a servant of some kind. His name was Abdul Karim. And she pretty much promoted him to be her teacher, or munshi. And supposedly he was like teaching her like languages and stuff, or teaching her about like the Indian culture or whatever. Now, her family and her advisors and stuff like that were not having it. They thought that Abdul Karim was a spy for the Muslim Patriotic League, and was perhaps biasing the queen against the Hindus in India. They also complained that this Indian fella was pretty much doing the same job as John Brown had been doing. So like I said, maybe the two of them were fucking. I'm not sure. I suspect they probably were. There's pictures of him, like, with her, because at this point they had photography. So I have seen, like, pictures of him. But I don't know if that's the case. But basically, anytime anybody said something about him to her, she'd be like, well, you're just racist. That's basically what she would say. I don't know. But he basically, like, stayed with her until after she died. Like, then he went back to India and he got a pension, like, for the rest of his life. So were they fucking? I don't know. Like, a lot of people think they probably were. I don't know. Maybe they were.
Well, you saying you being all crude, Jenny, were they fucking? It's her boyfriend.
That's what I mean. I kind of feel like it was. It probably was. And like I said, good for her.
Yeah.
Like, she liked him.
She cut his ass loose.
Well, no, he died.
Oh, he died. Yeah, okay, yeah.
But I mean, she died, and then like he went back to India.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, the queen's eldest daughter, who was also named Victoria, because they have to name everybody the same thing. Now she ended up becoming Empress of Germany in 1888, but she got widowed like that same year, and then her son ended up becoming Kaiser Wilhelm II. Now Victoria had actually kind of hoped that her daughter would help to kind of like make Germany not so German. But Wilhelm, as it turned out, was kind of a dick. And basically that ended up, like, he's kind of the one that led Germany into World War I against some of his British relatives, it should be noted, in 1914. So 1896, Victoria actually surpassed the record of her great-grandfather George III and became the longest reigning monarch in British history. Obviously since been surpassed by her great-great-granddaughter, Elizabeth II, who reigned for more than 70 years until her death very, very recently. Now, the following year, 1897, the Queen celebrated her 60-year Diamond Jubilee. She was at that point 78 years old, and there was like a big, huge procession through London, attended by big, huge crowds, everything like that. 1900, her second son, Alfred, died of throat cancer, and he was only 55 years old. So, like I said, she outlived like a bunch of her kids. Now, it's just probably junk.
Have you checked that recently?
No.
Okay.
I don't usually check it because 9 times out of 10.
Last time my dad called.
I know, but
okay.
I mean, I'll check it after.
Okay.
It's
right.
9 times out of 10. It's
right.
just a bunch of crap.
Good.
So now, ever since Albert had died, one of Victoria's things was that she would spend every Christmas at Osborne House, which was the house they had built for themselves on the Isle of Wight. Now, by this point in 1900, she went there for Christmas, but she was kind of fucked up. I mean, she had rheumatism. Like I said, she'd fallen down the stairs and she never recovered from that. So she couldn't really walk all that good. Her eyesight, she had like cataracts, so she couldn't really see all that good. And then throughout like the early part of January, like after Christmas, she started feeling like really, really sick and really weak and, basically just tired all the time, shit like that. So she ended up actually dying January 22nd, 1901 at the age of 81 years old. So her son and successor, who was King Edward VII, was at her bedside when she died. Also, her grandson was Emperor Wilhelm II. Now, she had a big funeral. She had written, instructions for it prior. And they had kind of like a military. She was a soldier's daughter. She was head of the army. So everybody wore white instead of black. That was kind of like what they did for this type of funeral. I kind of laughed at this. I know this is mean. But so Edward Wilhelm and her third son, Arthur, they said helped lift her body into the coffin. So it took 3 guys to lift her body into the coffin. Because she was a big girl. She was a big girl. By the time she died. She was pretty hefty. Also, she was buried with Albert's dressing gown. They put that next to her in her coffin. And a plaster cast of his hand, which I thought was very weird. She also had a lock of John Brown's hair and a picture of him. And they put that in her left hand, but they put a bunch of flowers on top of it so her family wouldn't see it, which I thought was also very funny. Now, she also had a wedding ring that had belonged to John Brown's mother that John Brown had given her, which that's kind of what started speculation that she had secretly married John Brown. And like I said, she didn't tell anybody because he was a commoner. And so maybe that's why. But she was wearing it. She was buried in that ring. But they put flowers over it so like some of the family wouldn't see it. You know what I mean? So there was that whole thing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because she wrote so much, like she wrote in her journal, one biographer said she averaged like 2,500 words a day, which is, that's pretty good. And so it wasn't just letters, it was journals and all that kind of stuff. So she had 122 volumes of journals when she died. So her daughter, Beatrice, was her literary executor and actually like kind of copied all the stuff over, but she burned a lot of shit too. Probably stuff that was like real embarrassing. But some of the stuff has since been recovered, so they figured out a bunch of stuff about her. So as I mentioned, I kind of feel like the reason that they still talk about Queen Victoria to this day, and I think that she didn't really do any of this stuff deliberately necessarily, but just the fact that the way that culture kind of like coalesced around her, I guess, she was kind of like, because she came in, there weren't really a lot of horrible scandals associated with her. She was pretty fiscally, responsible. She didn't do anything like all that crazy. And prior to that, I kind of feel like the monarchy had been on a downward slide just because of all the sex scandals and all the financial scandals. And it just seemed like, I feel like the British public had gotten sick of the monarchy because it seemed like they were just a bunch of degenerates who were just like laying around not doing anything. And it's like, we're paying them for just going and fucking around and, spending all our money and being degenerates, like I said. But because Victoria came and she was like fairly respectable, like I said, there were a couple scandals like early on, but it wasn't really that big a deal. The fact that she kind of came in and she had almost kind of like a not normal life, but a relatable life, or a life that was relatable to most of her subjects. I think that I kind of think if she hadn't come along, they might have gotten rid of the monarchy. But the fact that she came along and kind of like restored the respectability of it to some extent, conversely, by making it less powerful, but like more like of a social thing.
Yeah.
So I think that her being more of like a regular person, like not a regular person, but I mean, you know what I mean? I think people perceived her that way. So I think that allowed the monarchy to continue in the more ceremonial role that it continued, whether that's true or not. That's how people perceive it. So I kind of feel like had she not come along at that time and been the way she was, I kind of feel like they probably would have just got rid of the monarchy back then. Maybe not. Like, I don't know. But that was the impression that I got. But because she made the monarchy simultaneously less politically powerful, but at the same time more culturally or socially relevant, because it looked like, oh, they're just like regular people and they are actually doing things, like they're actually like trying to, do things with charities or like trying to do things like more in a cultural sort of way. And I think that kind of like softened the public's perception of them a little bit. And that's why they were kind of still around. So I think that's maybe why they were so influential, like why she's so influential to this day. Because the weird thing about it is that she really did not seem to give two shits about all of the wonders and the technological advances that were happening at this time. I mean, she was right around the same time as like Darwin's theory of evolution. She was right around the same time as like the Industrial Revolution, like all of that kind of stuff. But it's like she didn't really seem to give that much of a crap about it. And honestly, she didn't really have much patience for democracy. She didn't really have any patience for technological innovation or any of the big cultural changes that were happening. She didn't get into any of that stuff. And yet she still seemed emblematic of her era, which I thought was very, very interesting. Like that juxtaposition just seemed very interesting to me. But I don't know, like, what do you guys think about it? Because I don't know. I think that was the most interesting thing that I kind of gleaned from all of the stuff that I read about her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm hungry.
You think you're hungry?
Yeah, you want a quesadilla?
Sure, why not?
I'll make some quesadillas. I got all the stuff to make with pork tenderloin and everything in it.
All right, that'll
sound
be good.
good.
Yeah, that'll be
pork tenderloin, cheese, a little bit of beans in it.
Yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
Sure.
Show's over. Man, shut that shit down, James.
He's
shut
trying-
that shit down. I'm gonna
he's trying to rush me.
I'm gonna get my damn cooking clothes on. I gotta make something to eat.
He's cooking clothes.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to your chef jacket?
I got it put up. It's,
okay.
It's hanging up. It's hanging up in one of these closets.
I never see you wear it anymore. Does it fit
it's only,
you anymore?
It's only when I have guests.
Oh, okay. When you gotta like impress.
When I gotta go full fucking. When I go full
Would it even fit you
dress.
anymore, like with your big ass arms now?
What's that?
Would it even fit you now with your big ass
it fit
arms?
Me.
Oh,
It fit
okay.
me. Sure.
I haven't seen you wear it in a long time.
Yeah, it would fit.
It just occurred to me that you still had that. Like
Yeah.
that was a long time ago that you got that for
Yeah,
Christmas.
it would fit. No problem.
But yeah.
Just chef jacket.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up. Rebecca said, "Thank you for the show. I'll listen to it in full tomorrow. Hopefully,
Okay.
everybody enjoyed it. I actually had a good time, with this one. This was actually a good topic. So thank you. I think it was Zach that recommended it. So we will be back once again on Friday night, having some drinks and doing the sidetrack show, just talking about whatever. Now, I think Friday night is Memento Mori, also.
Okay.
Now that I'm thinking about it,
All
so
right.
it'll be like a pre-gaming show because we may have to go out afterward, like we did last Friday. But yeah, thanks everybody for dropping by. Thanks for your super chats, and we will see you guys again on Friday evening. Good night.